Chapter 1565. What's going on? Xiao Hua was the hope of Myriad Thunder Valley. How could he let Xiao Hua be wronged? Xiao Hua was obviously stunned, but he soon understood that Xiangyang didn't tell him about his punishment. And he didn't even tell him about the Eastern Ridge Medicinal Garden. Just as Xiao Hua was about to speak, Xiangyang rushed to say with an apologetic smile, "Master, it's like this."
Like what?
Xiao Hua glanced at Xiangyang helplessly. "You brat, you acted on your own again." Yes, I hope Master can understand." Xiangyang explained the matter, then finally said, "This matter isn't much. So disciple didn't report it to Master, only saying that little junior brother was cultivating in seclusion." "Damn it," Xiao Hua scolded with a smile. "This brat is indeed cultivating in seclusion, you're right." Seeing Xiao Hua happy, Xiangyang was also happy. He said, "Grandmaster Zhang Yi didn't make things difficult for little junior brother, so isn't this matter over? What's a year's worth? It can't compare to little junior brother stepping into the 11th layer of aura refining in 2 months." "Of course." Xiao Hua looked helplessly at him, then asked, "Grandmaster Zhang Yi really didn't make things difficult for you? He's a bit of a vengeful person." "No, how could he make things difficult for Disciple?" Xiao Hua shook his head with a smile. "Disciple just entered the sect. Isn't it normal to make some mistakes occasionally? That's good." Xiao Hua looked helplessly at Zhu Minghui, then said, "Your master's wife originally wanted to give you a meeting gift. She found medicinal pills with great difficulty from a senior sister in Mythical Thunder Palace, wanting you to use them to break through to the 11th layer of aura refining, but you made your master's wife work for nothing." "Thank you for your concern, master's wife." Xiao Hua's heart warmed, and he stepped forward to bow and thank her. "Child, why are you still being so polite?" Zhu Minghui waved her hand to help Xiao Hua up, then said, "You're the only child in Myriad Thunder Valley. If we don't think of you, who else can we think of?" Xiao Hua sweated, somewhat embarrassed. No matter what, he was 25 years old, but in their mouths, he was actually a child. But when he thought about it, they said he was over 100 years old. If he wasn't a child, then what was he? This vitality assimilation pill was given to 10th layer Qi refining disciples by the Imperial Thunder Sect. "It's not suitable for you now." A hint of awkwardness flashed across Zhu Minghui's eyes. Then, she smiled and said, "After a few days, Mistress will go to Distant Thunder Palace and see if they have any extra energy-gathering pills." "Absorption pill? Soul-gathering pill?" Xiao Hua inwardly muttered. "Motherfucker, it's really good to have a sect. I only know about the Peiyuan pill, but who would have thought that they have different pills for each level? Moreover, they even say that there are examples." Xiao Hua said with a smile, "There's no need to trouble yourself. Master's wife, you can just give the absorption pill to Disciple. Don't forget, your Disciple is a rogue cultivator and has never taken this soul-gathering pill before. Taking it now will have some effect." This, Zhu Minghui turned around helplessly. He waved his hand helplessly and said, "Give it to him. He has more experience in taking medicinal pills than we do. Don't worry about him." Zhu Minghui clapped her hand and took out 3 jade bottles from her storage bag. She said in a low voice, "Xiao Hua, you haven't taken this medicinal pill before. Don't be in a hurry to take a complete one." First, Zhu Minghui actually told Xiao Hua the taboo of taking the absorption pill bit by bit. Xiao Hua listened to her long-winded speech, but in his heart, he enjoyed it very much. He smiled slightly and nodded from time to time. In the end, Zhu Minghui still said apologetically, "In the end, this absorption pill isn't suitable for you. Mistress, you'd better take a look at the energy-gathering pill. You're about to reach the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. Medicinal pills are indispensable." Alas, unfortunately, Master doesn't know how to refine pills. Xiang Yang and Qing Lian also don't know how to refine pills. Only your mistress knows a little otherwise. He waved his hand helplessly and said. Xiao Hua's heart moved. He said with a smile, "I wonder if Mistress has the pill formulas for the absorption pill or the energy gathering pill?"
Huh.
What, you know how to refine pills? He stared helplessly, then said with pleasant surprise, "Master thinks too highly of disciple." Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand, then said in a low voice, "Disciple feels that. Disciple has been guarding the Eastern Ridges, medicinal garden. There's nothing else but the spiritual plants, aren't there a lot? Disciple also just received a lot of seeds from the Lightning Flash Hall. Disciple will first plant the pill formulas for the absorption pill and the energy gathering pill. When the time comes, Mistress can take the spiritual plants to exchange for medicinal pills. Wouldn't that be... Ah?" He helplessly stared blankly at first, then he looked at Xiao Hua and laughed sinisterly. Only Xiang Yang slightly frowned. "Little junior brother, I'm afraid this isn't appropriate, right?" "What's inappropriate?" Helplessly scolded. "According to your thinking, if you can't even get a single hair, who will refine pills and make talismans? Damn it, when can Xiao Hua build his foundation?" "Master?" Xiang Yang felt very wronged. Little junior brother just made a mistake. Don't make another mistake. "You," helplessly jumped up and said angrily, "It's you. You can only stay in the early stage of the foundation building realm. Husband." Zhuo Minghui also stood up with a whoosh and said angrily, "That child Xiang Yang is right. What are you shouting for?" Helplessly, he glanced at his angry wife. His eyes turned, and his expression immediately changed. He said, "Your husband is only teaching Xiang Yang to be more flexible."
My voice is just a bit loud.
"I'm not shouting anything. And Master is teaching disciples. Mistress, please take a seat first." Xiang Yang also said quickly. Zhuo Minghui glared at Xiang Yang and sat back in her chair. Yan Qinglian, on the other hand, had been sitting beside Xiang Yang all along. She lowered her head and didn't say a word. Master, eldest senior brother, you don't need to worry. The Eastern Ridges medicinal garden only has blazed dawn grass. The other spiritual plants are all barren. No one has ever paid attention to them. Disciple will find a place to plant the spiritual plants first." Hearing this, Zhuo Minghui pondered for a moment, then got up and returned to the back of the cave. After a moment, she came out again. Holding a jade slip, she handed it to Yan Qinglian and said, "Qinglian, this is the prescription for several kinds of medicinal pills for aura refining disciples to take. Make a copy of it and give it to Xiao Hua. Let him get some spiritual plants. If I go to senior sister empty-handed, I really don't have any face." Disciple obeys. Only now did Yan Qinglian raise her head and respectfully receive the jade slip.
"All right."
Helplessly waving her hand, she pointed to her right and said, "Xiao Hua, from now on, you can sit here." "Yes." Xiao Hua waited for Yan Qinglian to bring over a chair, then carefully sat down. Helplessly, she looked at Xiao Hua with satisfaction and said, "Now that you're already in the 11th layer of aura refining, it's time to start building your foundation. One is the problem of divine sense. If you still haven't developed divine sense by the time you reach the 12th layer of aura refining, you'll have to immediately use our sect's secret technique to stimulate divine sense. The later it is, the less likely you'll be able to build your foundation. Of course, there's no need to stimulate divine sense too early. Although those disciples of influential clans in the 11th layer of aura refining have divine sense, their future prospects are limited. You're a loose cultivator. From what I see, that heavenly laws embodiment technique of yours doesn't involve divine sense. I'm afraid it'll be a bit troublesome." Hearing this, Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat. He was a bit anxious. Of course, he didn't have a Muon palace, so how could he develop divine sense? "Should I tell Master?" Xiao Hua was a bit hesitant. Just as he was hesitating, he helplessly said, "Although our sect's secret technique is different from other sects, in the end, it's all related to the rainbow epiphyllum. I'll give you the secret technique now so you can familiarize yourself with it in advance. As for the item, when you reach the peak of the 11th layer of aura refining, Master will go to the Thunder Palace to take a look for you. This item should be available in the Qiqiao Pavilion. However, it's hard to say how old it is." "Master, the older the rainbow epiphyllum, the better, right?" Xiao Hua's heart stirred. He put the matter of the Muon Palace aside and asked urgently. Of course. The older the rainbow epiphyllum is, the greater the possibility of developing divine sense. Helplessly and somewhat pensively, he said, it's just that there are a lot of disciples entering our Imperial Thunder sect this time. I'm afraid that the rainbow epiphyllum in the Qiqiao Pavilion won't be enough. We should act first to gain the upper hand. If we can't, then we'll have the disciples go to the major markets to buy them. Our Imperial Thunder sect is such a large sect. How could we not find these things? Zhuo Minghui smiled and said, if we can't find them, then we can use other spiritual plants. That's true. Helplessly, he rubbed his hands and said, your husband is afraid of delaying Xiao Hua's cultivation. I'm a bit worried about personal gains and losses. On the side, Xiao Hua also secretly nodded and once again sighed with emotion. AI, it's really good to have the support of a sect. Helplessly, he thought for a moment and said, after the matter of divine sense, it's the problem of cultivation methods. Xiao Hua, your master and your eldest senior brother both cultivate the 10,000 June Thunderbolt cultivation method. This cultivation method can withstand the heavenly thunder of the 10,000 Thunder Valley and advance very quickly. It can be considered a medium-level cultivation method of our Thunderous Palace. Zhuo Minghui asked from the side, that's strange. If you don't let Xiao Hua cultivate 10,000 June Thunderbolt, what other cultivation method can he cultivate? He. Helplessly, with a mysterious expression, he pointed his finger and said, Xiao Hua, show your sect master's command token to your master's wife. Yes, master. Xiao Hua was secretly happy in his heart and took out the sect master's command token. It really is the sect master's command token. Zhuo Minghui suddenly realized and said with a smile, looks like it's the sect master's reward for Xiao Hua. Exactly. Helplessly, he said in a low voice, in order to reward Xiao Hua for sending the thunder-devouring bead back to the Imperial Thunder sect, the sect master specially issued a sect master's command that Xiao Hua can cultivate all the cultivation methods of the 8 great thunder palaces. Ah? Zhuo Minghui and Yan Qinglian were both shocked when they heard this for the first time. What a pity. I don't know when this brat will be able to give me my lightning evasion technique. Helplessly, he sighed. Master, don't worry. Disciple will go to the Heavenly Thunder Palace and get that cultivation method for master. Xiao Hua pretended to get up. Nonsense. Quickly sit down. Helplessly, despite knowing Xiao Hua's pretense, he still scolded with a smile. It won't be too late to find it when you go to choose your cultivation method. And, since Xiao Hua has this good fortune, then this cultivation method must be carefully chosen. Yan Qinglian nodded and said, Sigh, that's right. When there was no cultivation method, Xiao Hua had to worry about finding one. Now that there is a cultivation method, he has to worry about finding a suitable cultivation method. Therefore, everyone has their own worries and every family has their own difficulties. This is indeed reasonable. Chapter 1566. Helplessly looking at Xiao Hua, he said in a deep voice, My Imperial Thunder sect's cultivation methods are generally divided into 3 grades. The first grade is the high-grade cultivation method, which is cultivated by those with thunder attribute physiques. Not only is the progress very fast, but the power of the cultivation method is also very strong. The second grade is the middle-grade cultivation method, which is prepared for those with fire attribute physiques. The progress should also be okay, but the power of the cultivation method is reduced. I'm afraid it can't compare to the high-grade thunder attribute cultivation method. The third grade is naturally the low-grade cultivation method, which is prepared for disciples with other attribute physiques. The cultivation speed is not fast, and the power is also ordinary. Of course, there are some disciples with rare attribute physiques. Their cultivation methods are also high-grade, but these disciples are extremely rare even in my Imperial Thunder sect, so there's no need to talk about them. Xiao Hua said with a frown. Disciple is of the fire attribute, so I naturally have to cultivate a fire attribute cultivation method. This can only be a middle-grade cultivation method. What else is there to choose? You idiot, if there isn't. Why would Master say this? helplessly scolded. What Master said above is only the general idea. My Imperial Thundersect's 8 Great Thunder Palaces cultivation methods are all hidden in the inheritance pavilions. And there are also the cultivation methods obtained by the previous masters when they were traveling outside. You, a little loose cultivator, can obtain 3 kinds of cultivation methods. How can my Imperial Thundersect's cultivation methods be less than yours? Yes, disciple understands. Xiao Hua understood helplessness's temper. He lowered his head and said, "Looks like my Thunderclap Palace has a high-grade fire attribute cultivation method?" "That's natural. Otherwise, Master and you." Halfway through speaking, helplessness realized that he had just said it. He coughed and scolded. "You idiot, if our Thunderclap Palace doesn't have it, you can go to the other 7 Great Thunder Palaces. Master wants to tell you, especially the Heavenly Thunder Palace, there are many good things inside. But disciple can't tell if that cultivation method is good or bad." Xiao Hua somewhat scratched his head. "Damn it, Xiangyang, copy the beginning of the 10,000 Thunderbolts cultivation method for Xiao Hua to see." Now that he knows what a middle-grade cultivation method looks like, is it still hard to find a high-grade cultivation method? Helplessness was somewhat impatient. "Master, this isn't good." Xiangyang anxiously said, "My Imperial Thunder Sect has its own rules. Xiao Hua can only receive Master's personal guidance when he reaches the Foundation Establishment stage. Moreover, if this Foundation Establishment cultivation method is seen by little junior brother earlier, I'm afraid it will be detrimental to his cultivation." What kind of bullshit rules are these? Which of those core formation martial uncles didn't casually give pointers to their aura refining disciples? He mumbled helplessly, "Besides, I didn't give him any pointers. I only asked you to show him a cultivation technique." "Oh right, after you read Xiao Hua's cultivation technique, you must not cultivate it. Your cultivation realm is insufficient. If you forcefully cultivate it, you will definitely perish." Xiao Hua's heart trembled, and he bowed and said, "Disciple understands." Soon after, he helplessly hesitated for a moment before saying, "I've already told you about the cultivation method and divine sense. The only one left is the great circle of the aura refining realm." Xiao Hua was an individual cultivator, so his cultivation method was lacking. From the first layer of the aura refining realm to the 12th layer of the aura refining realm, he didn't know how many areas needed to be perfected. Sigh. Master is also worried about you. How about this, Xiao Hua? We don't need the great circle of the aura refining realm. You only need to cultivate to the peak of the aura refining realm and break through to the foundation establishment stage. Then you can take a foundation building pill. We only need the small circle of the aura refining realm. This, Xiao Hua also hesitated. After all, didn't he go to the Fu clan to look for the Qingyan talisman? He wanted to cultivate to the great circle of the aura refining realm. Now that he had the method to refine the Qingyan talisman and the cultivation method, if he didn't cultivate to the great circle of the aura refining realm, his heart would be really uncomfortable. Hee, Master, you've forgotten. Little junior brother is a loose cultivator. I'm afraid he has never heard of the great circle of the aura refining realm. Xiangyang helplessly reminded Xiao Hua when he saw him hesitate. Oh, right. Xiao Hua helplessly slapped his forehead. Just as he was about to explain, Xiao Hua said, "Disciple understands what the great circle of the aura refining realm is." However, Disciple believes that since he can reach the great circle of the aura refining realm, Disciple can't cultivate without reason. If Disciple really can't cultivate, Disciple can just open the Qingyan talisman and directly enter the foundation establishment stage, right? How can it be that simple? Xiao Hua helplessly smiled bitterly. Foundation establishment isn't just about cultivation realm, it's also about fate. If you miss the opportunity to enter the foundation establishment stage, it will be even harder to enter the foundation establishment stage.
Ah,
There's such a thing? Xiao Hua was astonished. Isn't that right? Look at your eldest martial brother. He still doesn't know? Xiao Hua helplessly looked at Xiangyang and said, "Yes, what Master said is the truth. Little junior brother, you still have to think twice." Xiangyang nodded. Xiao Hua thought for a moment. In his mind, Li Zhongbao's great circle of the aura, refining realm appeared. His eyes flashed with a trace of unswerving determination. He smiled and said, "Disciple still wants to try. If it really doesn't work, Disciple will open the Qingyan talisman." Xiao Hua helplessly turned his head to look at Zhuo Minghui. The latter's eyes were filled with admiration as she slightly nodded. "Ah, okay." Xiao Hua helplessly sighed and said, "In a few days, I'll go to Qiqiao Pavilion and help you fight for the Qingyan talisman." "Qingyan talisman?
Fight for it?
Xiao Hua was somewhat puzzled. Xiang Yang smiled and said, "The Qingyan talisman and the Qingyan talisman have roughly the same effect, only the names are different. As for fighting for it, it's because the Qingyan talisman is extremely difficult to refine. If it's not an outstanding disciple in the sect, it won't be given. When the time comes, whether or not little junior brother can get the Qingyan talisman is still uncertain." Afterwards, Xiao Hua accompanied Xiao Hua and Zhuo Minghui to talk for a while. Then, Xiao Hua followed Xiang Yang and Yan Qinglian back to their immortal's cave. Xiang Yang was very concerned about Xiao Hua's cultivation. He asked Xiao Hua some details about his cultivation, but what could Xiao Hua say? Xiang Yang listened for a while and couldn't understand anything. He had no choice but to talk about some of his experiences when he was cultivating his foundation. This experience was the most precious. When Xiao Hua was a loose cultivator, he definitely wouldn't have heard about it. Almost every word Xiang Yang said hit Xiao Hua's heart, causing him to scratch his head in excitement. Naturally, Xiao Hua also asked a lot of questions. His questions were also very sharp. Sometimes, it was difficult for Xiang Yang to answer. He even called Yan Qinglian, who was in the middle stage of the foundation establishment realm, to answer. Unknowingly, the two of them talked for an entire night. When dawn broke the next day, Xiao Hua reluctantly said goodbye and prepared to return to the eastern ridge. At this time, Yan Qinglian took out 4 booklets and gave them to him. At the top was the refining method of the invisibility talisman. Yan Qinglian said very gratefully, "Little junior brother, this invisibility talisman has already been copied into a jade slip. I'm currently comprehending it. Unfortunately, I don't have the blood and fur of a lizard beast, so I'm afraid I can't refine it successfully. However, I still have to thank little junior brother for being able to learn this invisibility talisman." Xiao Hua promptly waved his hand. "Senior sister has helped little junior brother so much. This invisibility talisman is nothing. When little junior brother gets a lizard beast for senior sister to refine into the invisibility talisman, it won't be too late to thank little junior brother then." Yan Qinglian covered her mouth and said, "Then senior sister will wait for little junior brother's lizard beast." The second booklet was, of course, the pill recipes for the soul-assimilating pill and soul-gathering pill. Zhuo Minghui didn't say that she would copy them completely, while Xiao Hua only said that he would look for the spiritual grasses. Logically speaking, Yan Qinglian only needed to copy what kind of spiritual grasses were needed to refine these 2 pills, but she had completely copied down these 2 pill recipes. Xiao Hua only needed to open the booklet to know what kind of spiritual grasses were needed to refine these 2 pills. The third booklet, needless to say, was precisely the first mnemonic chant of the foundation building cultivation technique 10,000 June Thunderbolt, and the method to circulate true qi through the meridians. Although the copy of this cultivation technique wasn't complete, the mnemonic chant and the initial refinement of the meridians and true qi were all clearly explained. Xiang Yang's face was also somewhat awkward. He said in a low voice, "Little junior brother, the aura refining stage is the process of cultivators drawing spiritual energy into their body and refining it into true qi for their own use. As for the foundation building stage, true qi no longer exists. Instead, it liquefies and forms the so-called true essence. This true essence is the same as ordinary flowing water. No matter whether its quality or structure, it's not something true qi can compare to. Only by cultivating to the foundation building stage can one truly step into the realm of cultivation. Only then can one truly control magic tools and magic weapons and truly mobilize the spiritual energy of heaven and earth." Therefore, this foundation-building cultivation technique is completely different from the aura refining stage cultivation technique. Little junior brother can only use it as a reference and absolutely cannot practice it. As for the fourth booklet, it was even more beyond Xiao Hua's expectations. It was actually a secret technique of the Imperial Thunder Sect. It was a secret technique to refine the rainbow epiphyllum and other objects to stimulate divine sense. However, just as he said, Yan Qinglian had already prepared it. She was truly a good senior sister-in-law. Xiao Hua took the 4 booklets and stored them in his space. He cupped his hands in thanks and said, "Little junior brother understands. If you have any questions, little junior brother will send a sound-transmitting talisman." "Good. You should cultivate properly. Elder brother won't disturb you. There's still a year before the next Flame Dawn Grass submission. Just remember it when the time comes," Xiangyang said with a smile. "Don't, eldest senior brother. If you have something to do, you should go more often. Little junior brother is very lonely there," Xiao Hua hurriedly said. Xiangyang curled his lips and repeatedly said that he didn't believe him. Yan Qinglian took out 3 jade bottles from her storage pouch and said with a smile, "Little junior brother's monthly allowance is gone. I'm afraid that master's wife won't be able to find soul-gathering pills for the time being. Senior sister-in-law still has a few soul assimilation pills. They were also taken from junior sister Thunder Palace. You should take them for now." Senior sister-in-law. Xiao Hua was really moved. Since he could remember, only Shang Huaming's 3 senior brothers had given him such care. And that bastard Zhang Qingxiao even coveted his Peiyuan pill. Unfortunately, even if he wanted to give these pills to them now, he couldn't find them. "Take them for now." Xiangyang waved his hand at this time. "Don't be a little girl. If you know how to cultivate diligently and reach foundation establishment a step earlier and win glory for our myriad Thunder Valley, elder brother and your senior sister-in-law will be satisfied." Xiao Hua took the pills and secretly made up his mind. When he returned to the Eastern Ridge, he would immediately look for earth fire, immediately refine pills, immediately cultivate, immediately, and a lot of things immediately. He must reach foundation establishment as soon as possible. He couldn't disappoint those who cared about him, and he couldn't let those who hurt him be happy. Thinking of foundation establishment, Xiao Hua's eyes narrowed. He thought of 100 Herbs Gate. "Damn it, Zhang Jiantong, just you wait. I'll be back soon. You've seized my Shang Huaming's place, so you must spit it out bit by bit," Xiao Hua thought. He cupped his hands and bid farewell to Xiangyang and Yan Qinglian, then flew to the Eastern Ridge Medicine Garden. With the identity token, Xiao Hua no longer had the chance to get lost. According to the map in the token and his own little bright spot, Xiao Hua easily flew to the Eastern Ridge. Chapter 1567. As expected, the Eastern Mountain Range was far away, and the myriad Thunder Valley was even more remote. The two were not in the same direction. Although it was a bit closer than the Thunder Palace, it still made Xiao Hua fly for a long time. Seeing that the area ahead looked very barren and was not a good place to go, Xiao Hua's heart trembled and he thought, "I'm afraid I'm lost again." Then, Xiao Hua hurriedly took out the identity tablet and opened the map, and the direction should be correct. This should be a dangerous place of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Xiao Hua had just thought of this when a deafening roar came from the mountain range to his right. Xiao Hua's body tensed up. That roar seemed to have the effect of confinement. Xiao Hua's flight technique lost its effect, and he immediately fell from the sky. Xiao Hua's heart also jumped, as if it was going to jump out. Damn it! Xiao Hua was shocked. On one hand, he shook his arms, trying his best to break free from the confinement around his body. On the other hand, he felt helpless and used the method to resist the sound of thunder that he had just taught. That method was indeed useful. Just as Xiao Hua broke free from the confinement around his body, his heartbeat also returned to normal. However, without waiting for Xiao Hua to fly up again, an emotionless divine sense quickly swept over. Foundation Establishment Spirit Beast. Xiao Hua was shocked. He didn't even have the time to be shocked. He urged his magic power and immediately used the earth escape technique. Like a stone, his whole body quickly fell down and disappeared without a trace. That divine sense followed Xiaohua into the ground, but it immediately withdrew, as if it had lost interest in Xiaohua and withdrew like a waterfall. After escaping very far underground, Xiaohua felt that the divine sense didn't chase after him again. Only then did he shake off the sweat on his forehead and thought in a panic, "Did I make a mistake? Every time I come out, I have to run into something." Last time, it was a fight between two late-stage Foundation establishment cultivators, and I was caught in the crossfire. But fortunately, I was lucky and became a fisherman. This time, I directly ran into a spirit beast. I just flew past a dangerous place. Alas, why is there no safe place in the Imperial Thunder Sect? In the future, I'll have to stay far away from these dangerous places. Xiaohua escaped from the ground, identified the direction, and fled without a trace. By the time Xiaohua fully utilized his flight technique and flew back to the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden, the sky had already turned completely dark. Even though the night was nothing to cultivators, Xiaohua still felt somewhat cold in his heart. Only after he opened the array formation and returned to his abode did Xiaohua feel slightly safer. But immediately after, Xiaohua stomped his feet. What is this Thunder Flash Hall's deacon doing? Even the array formation token of the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden had been taken away by someone else, and he didn't even know about it. Damn it, I don't know when they'll be able to do it. You're all fine, but you're making me worry here. Sigh, there's nothing I can do. Xiaohua raised his head and sighed, but soon after, he didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He put his palms together and muttered in the direction of the myriad Thunder Valley, "Master, this disciple didn't call you elder, and it's not that I'm disrespectful. Who told you to have such a strange name?" Afterwards, Xiaohua released his perception and looked all around. Seeing that there wasn't anything abnormal, he placed the warning talismans in the abode and sat on a chair in the abode to ponder. This Eastern Ridges array formation isn't very safe now. I have to think of a way myself. Evil Zhen's array formation is pretty good. It can even trap late-stage Foundation establishment Qin Mingwei. I have to hurry and see how this array formation is arranged. Xiaohua was thinking about taking out Evil Zhen's things from the space, but just as his mind entered the space, he remembered that other Foundation establishment cultivators used divine sense. He didn't have divine sense and only had perception, so how could he control it? Moreover, he didn't seem to know the method to control divine sense. So how could he? So I had the foresight to ask eldest senior brother to give me a method to control magic tools? Magic tools are controlled by divine sense. Even if there isn't a method to control them, it will definitely be involved. With this young master's intelligence, how could I not know how to use it? Thinking, Xiaohua took out the booklet that Xiangyang gave him. Sure enough, not only did the booklet talk about the expedient method without divine sense, it also talked about the method to control magic tools in great detail. Although it didn't specifically teach about divine sense, Xiaohua was still beaming with joy. That's right. Didn't eldest senior brother also give me the method to read jade slips? These two things can be used for reference. These days, Xiaohua took a lot of things from Xiangyang, so he was somewhat confused. And fortunately, this young master has a master now, so I don't have to worry about these things. I have an honest and considerate eldest senior brother and eldest senior sister-in-law who have already prepared these incantations. I only need to properly practice them. Soon after, Xiaohua's heart warmed again. It was as if even a black shadow couldn't be seen as black. Xiaohua wasn't in a hurry to see how to control magic tools. First, he took out the method to use divine sense and carefully studied it. Then he compared the method to read jade slips with divine sense. Late at night, he returned to his cave and sat cross-legged on a praying mat, cultivating heavenly law's embodiment technique. The next day, Xiaohua opened his eyes and checked his cultivation. He couldn't help but smile bitterly. In the past few days, he had been refining fire essence flame crystals, so his cultivation increased at a godly speed. Now, he didn't have any suitable medicinal pills to take, nor did he have any fire essence flame crystals to refine. His cultivation increased at a tortoise's speed, returning to the first layer of aura, refining at Yellow Flower Ridge. It wasn't that it wasn't increasing, it was just too slow. Xiao Hua still had some Qing-Yi pills in his space, but they were no longer suitable for the 11th layer of aura refining. He did have a lot of foundation establishment pills, but they were reserved for when he reached foundation establishment. Didn't you hear Wu Qi say that? Foundation establishment was just a matter of opportunity. If he didn't grasp it, it would be difficult to step foot in the future. Soon after, Xiao Hua didn't delay. He flew up and first found a pill room in Eastern Ridge. The pill room wasn't too far from the cave. The earth fire inside was sealed with a spell, just like the Fu clan. However, the seal was extremely firm. From the looks of it, it was at least the work of a foundation establishment cultivator. Xiao Hua was helpless. He spent a tremendous amount of effort to use the tip of the devil's spear to loosen the seal. However, from the looks of it, there was still some distance before the seal was broken. And, fortunately, the seal didn't automatically recover under the burning of the earth fire. Otherwise, Xiao Hua would have vomited blood. Soon after, Xiao Hua found a slightly suitable place and released the puppet. It flattened the mountainous area, tidied up the medicinal garden, and took the seeds of the spiritual herbs. At the very least, he had to do something to save face. For more than 10 days, Xiao Hua didn't do anything else but tidied up these things. However, it could be considered as a harvest. The earth fire seal was finally broken through after his painstaking efforts. The spiritual herbs were also planted in his space. Of course, they were planted earlier than these. As for the method of using divine sense, Xiao Hua was even more delighted. His perception was actually the same as divine sense and could be controlled by him. Needless to say, he could already read the jade slips. It was even possible to write things in the jade slips. Moreover, he also thoroughly understood the method of refining magic tools. The only thing left was to refine the magic tools in the space. Of course, his current focus wasn't on magic tools. He first put these aside and looked through Zhen Xie's things. Zhen Xie was a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator. There were many things in his storage pouch. Aside from the spiritual herbs that couldn't compare to Xiao Hua's, he had more spirit stones and medicinal pills than Xiao Hua. Moreover, Zhen Xie's storage pouch also had many jade slips and a small number of magic tools. As for the yellow talismans and other commonly used items, needless to say, there were even a few rare spiritual talismans. However, Xiao Hua completely ignored all of this. He only took out those jade slips and looked through them one by one. The jade slips contained incomplete cultivation methods, pill recipes, talisman crafting methods, spell techniques commonly used by foundation establishment cultivators, and so on. There were also many that Xiao Hua didn't understand. These were all thrown to the side by him. It wasn't until he picked up a jade slip that Xiao Hua's furrowed brows relaxed. This jade slip recorded the arrangement and control method of the Heavenly Fire Array. Of course, the jade slip didn't only record the Heavenly Fire Array. There were also some basic formation principles and other formations. However, Xiao Hua didn't want to study it in detail at this time. He put the other jade slips that he had seen and hadn't seen into the space. Only then did he carefully look at the Heavenly Fire Array. The Great Fire Array looked very difficult to understand. After looking at it for several days, Xiao Hua suddenly realized that the Great Fire Array was essentially the same as the Warning Amulet. The difference was that the Warning Amulet had different runes written on the Child Amulet in advance and then used the Parent Amulet to control it. The Great Fire Array was composed of array discs and array flags. The runes were written on the array discs and array flags in advance. The array discs were the child amulets which were arranged in secret places. The array flags were the parent amulets which were used to activate and control the array. Understanding this, Xiao Hua still felt somewhat confused. It seems the array shouldn't be like this, right? But what is this array? He couldn't remember. All right, this young master will first understand this Heavenly Fire Array and protect myself. Xiao Hua abandoned the idea of getting to the bottom of things and specifically pondered on how to arrange the heavenly fire array. In the blink of an eye, several dozen days passed, and Xiao Hua barely understood this array. Soon after, Xiao Hua left the cave and walked to a suitable location. With a wave of his hand, he took out a shiny formation plate. He closed his eyes and pondered for a moment. His hand formed a seal, and along with the movement of Xiao Hua's fingers, the surrounding slightly violent fire attribute spiritual energy was sucked into the seal. When the seal was formed, Xiao Hua's face was deathly pale. His hand felt as if it was holding a heavy object, and every wave was extremely difficult. In the end, Xiao Hua finished forming the hand seals. He clenched his teeth and urged the remaining magic power in his body. He flung his hand and hit the formation plate. The formation plate ignited with a tongue sound. It was like an orange-red flame that was extremely enchanting as it floated in the air. Moreover, along with the dancing of the flame, the surrounding spiritual energy of heaven and earth was also attracted, and the flame became increasingly bigger. Chapter 1568. Xiao Hua squinted his eyes. He took out a few Qingyi pills and threw them into his mouth. He operated Heavenly Law's embodiment technique to refine the medicinal power and recover his magic power. When his magic power recovered a bit, Xiao Hua urged his magic power again. He pointed at the orange flame and shouted, "Quick!" Suddenly, the flame seemed to have gained sentience as it landed on the ground and disappeared. Once the flames disappeared, Xiao Hua also sat on the ground. He gasped for breath and said, "Damn it, this magic formation really isn't something an aura refining cultivator like me can make. I just finished making a magic plate, and my magic power is already not enough. Wouldn't it take me several days to finish setting up the entire heavenly fire formation? But in this formation that can kill a foundation establishment late-stage cultivator, won't I be at ease?" As a result, Xiao Hua set up a formation plate every day. Then, the magic power in his body would be exhausted. Then, he would close his eyes and cultivate to recover his magic power. The next day, he would set up another formation plate. After several days, the entire heavenly fire formation was completely set up. Because the location of the earth fire was not very far from the cave, Xiao Hua considered safety and placed an abandoned alchemy room in the formation. After he finished setting it up, Xiao Hua was once again exhausted and had no magic power left. He could only clap his hands foolishly and say to himself, "This is a formation. I'm really a genius." However, when Xiao Hua recovered his magic power, he was stunned when he used his magic power to urge the formation flag. The entire heavenly fire formation couldn't be activated. Needless to say, there was definitely a problem with Xiao Hua's arrangement. In the following 10 days, Xiao Hua compared the jade slip and carefully thought about his method. He constantly improved it. Finally, on a night when dusk was rising, he finished setting up the entire heavenly fire formation. The instant he finished setting it up, Xiao Hua sensed that the fire-attributed spiritual energy of heaven and earth around the heavenly fire formation was suddenly sucked into the formation plate. It overflowed like flowing water in the formation plate. When it reached a certain equilibrium, the spiritual energy of heaven and earth gradually disappeared. The formation plate's previous abnormality also disappeared. Wonderful! Xiao Hua clapped his hands. This was exactly the same as Zhen Xie's arrangement. However, right when Xiao Hua circulated his magic energy and activated the formation with a wave of the flag according to the jade slip, the extremely enormous suction force on the flag had absorbed all of Xiao Hua's magic energy in a short moment, and not a single drop remained. Fortunately, Xiao Hua's magic power was just enough for him to wave the spell flag once. Looking at the orange flame that appeared in the place he wanted to see with the wave of the spell flag in his hand, Xiao Hua's battered heart was revived. However, after resting for a while, Xiao Hua once again had some doubts. He knew that his magic power was different from ordinary cultivators. It was much more vigorous. Although he was currently in the middle stage of the 11th layer of the aura refining realm, Xiao Hua believed that his magic power was absolutely comparable to the peak of the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. Thinking about all the pills he had taken and the fire essence flame crystals he had refined, Xiao Hua would naturally think so. In fact, he even believed that his magic power was not much weaker than an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator. After all, these days, Xiao Hua often dealt with early-stage foundation establishment cultivators, especially Xiangyang. In Xiao Hua's eyes, Xiangyang's magic power, to be honest, was really, since that was the case, then there was no reason for Xiao Hua to wave the formation flag only once. Even if this formation flag was used by a late-stage foundation establishment cultivator, the disparity couldn't be that great. Thinking about how Jinxie had easily waved the formation flag that day and freely controlled the formation, Xiao Hua's heart was filled with doubts. Could it be that there are still many secrets in this formation that I can't figure out? Xiao Hua was very puzzled. He flipped through the jade slip again, but where were these records? Forget it. Let's talk about it later. Xiao Hua put down his doubts. Next, Xiao Hua didn't stop. He first took the vitality absorption pill and tempered it. Sure enough, this vitality absorption pill was worthy of being a medicinal pill designated by the Imperial Thunder Sect. Its effect was not comparable to low-level medicinal pills like the Clear Breeze pill. Xiao Hua felt that his cultivation had improved again. Since he knew that this vitality absorption pill was useful, then the so-called vitality gathering pill must also be effective. Thus, Xiao Hua went to the pill room and took out the three-legged vermilion bird phoenix patterned furnace. While warming up the pill furnace, he took out the pill recipe that Yan Qinglian had copied and examined it. After he finished reading, his brows slightly wrinkled. With a wave of his hand, he took out another jade slip. This jade slip turned out to be Jinxie's. It also contained pill recipes and alchemy techniques. Jinxie was originally an alchemist who refined the clear flower pill, so he naturally had these things on him. Xiao Hua didn't look at it carefully. After all, what was recorded in this jade slip were basically medicinal pills used by Foundation establishment cultivators. There were only a few records of medicinal pills used by high-level qi refinement cultivators like the Vitality Absorption Pill and the Vitality Congregation Pill. Only after seeing that the things inside were the same as what was recorded did Xiao Hua put away the jade slip and booklet. He frowned and pondered. The method of refining the Vitality Absorption Pill is different from the method of refining the Clear Pleasure Pill. There are many areas where the difference is very large. My methods are suitable for refining the Clear Pleasure Pill, but I don't know if they can be used when refining the Vitality Absorption Pill. This Vitality Absorption Pill's main ingredient also contains the Vitality Absorption fruit. I'm afraid it's about the same as refining the Peiyuan Pill. Of course, they're about the same. In Xiao Hua's heart was referring to his own refining techniques. He had a lot of spiritual herbs in his space, and the main ingredients and supplementary ingredients for refining the Vitality Absorption Pill were all present. Once the pill furnace was ready, Xiao Hua began to refine the Vitality Absorption Pill. The refining room for the Vitality Absorption Pill was naturally complicated. It couldn't be mentioned in the same breath as the Clear Breeze Pill. However, with Xiao Hua's experience of refining pills in the Fu clan's pill refining room, he gradually fumbled around. After more than 10 days of hard work, he finally succeeded in refining 4 medicinal pills in a furnace. After casting the cultivation technique into the pill furnace, Xiao Hua took out the Vitality Absorption Pill given to him by Zhuo Minghui and put it into his mouth. He then operated his cultivation technique to refine the medicinal efficacy. Soon after, he took out the Vitality Absorption Pill given to him by Yan Qinglian and similarly refined it in his meridians. He then opened his eyes and said with a smile, "Sure enough, the Vitality Absorption Pills given to Master and Senior Sister-in-law are the same. I'm afraid this medicinal pill is the same as the Clear Flower Pill. Every year, there's a fixed alchemist who refines it and then distributes it to the aura refining disciples as a regular offering." Thinking up to this point, Xiao Hua slapped his head and took out a jade bottle from his space. He thought to himself, "This is young master's first month's regular offering at the Imperial Thunder Sect. If it wasn't for eldest senior martial brother helping me receive it, I'm afraid I would have been punished and confiscated, right?
Huh.
This is also a vitality absorption pill. Xiaohua took out the medicinal pill from the jade bottle and took a look. Soon after, he also took it. After a long while, the medicinal efficacy of the vitality absorption pill was refined by him. Xiaohua opened his eyes and sneered. The medicinal efficacy of this vitality absorption pill is inferior to the previous two. I'm afraid it was refined by two different alchemists. Moreover, looking at how the medicinal efficacy is so far apart, not only is there a difference in the level of alchemy between the two alchemists, there's also a difference in their cultivation, right? Soon after, Xiaohua waved his hand, and the jade bottle on the ground flew into his hand. He said with a smile, I wonder how much of a difference there is between young master's level and that of the Imperial Thunder Sect's alchemists? However, after waiting for a moment, before Xiaohua had time to refine the medicinal efficacy, his face revealed a trace of amazement, as well as a trace of pleasant surprise. And it was a face full of pride. Damn it! Could it be that young master is an alchemist? After refining the medicinal efficacy of the vitality absorption pill, Xiaohua opened his eyes and immediately somersaulted several times in the air. How can the vitality absorption pill refined by myself be compared to the one refined by the Imperial Thunder Sect's alchemists by several times? How can the Imperial Thunder Sect's alchemists endure this? Ha ha ha. Xiaohua laughed heartily. However, just as this laughter resounded through the pill refining room, it came to an abrupt stop. Xiaohua stared blankly on the spot. Soon after, Xiaohua's face revealed an expression of sudden realization. He jumped up from the ground and said loudly, I understand. Why is it that Foundation establishment cultivators can easily set up formations, but I have to use so much effort to set them up? It turns out that it's just as eldest senior brother said. Foundation establishment cultivators have a lot of true qi in their meridians, but it's true essence. True essence is liquid true qi. No matter whether it's quality or quantity, it's not on the same level as true qi. And how can the magic power produced by true essence compare to the magic power produced by true qi? They're simply not on the same level. Moreover, I also understand what Master said before on Yellowflower Ridge. Without a realm, even if one's magic power continuously increases, what's the use? The magic power casually used by a Foundation establishment cultivator is more than the magic power of a qi refining cultivator. Moreover, Xiaohua laughed out loud. Moreover, how would I know what it is? I'm afraid that only when this young master enters Foundation establishment will I know the specific difference, right? Damn it, this young master must enter Foundation establishment. Xiaohua thought. He reached out and took out the vigorous thunderbolt cultivation technique. Although Xiangyang repeatedly warned him not to read it too early, Xiaohua really couldn't help it. Of course, this Foundation establishment cultivation technique was different from qi refining cultivation technique. The mnemonic chant was quite obscure, and Xiaohua didn't understand many parts of it. Fortunately, Xiaohua wasn't really cultivating right now. He just wanted to see how this cultivation technique was like in the end. He wanted to have a foundation in his heart so that he could go to the 8 Great Lightning Palaces Technique Inheritance Pavilion in the future to look for even higher level cultivation techniques. Although Vigorous Thunderbolt was different from Heavenly Law's embodiment technique, they both used meridians to temper the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Inside, there were naturally descriptions of meridians. However, after more than 10 days of reading and thinking, Xiaohua had some doubts. The meridians of this Foundation establishment cultivation technique actually weren't connected to the meridians of the qi refining realm. This was naturally a very strange matter, because among the qi refining cultivation techniques that Xiaohua had come into contact with, regardless of whether it was Death Flower Underworld, Raising Fire to the Heavens, or Heavenly Law's embodiment technique, the end of each layer of the cultivation technique was connected to the beginning of the next layer of the cultivation technique. In Xiaohua's understanding, a higher layer of cultivation technique was to break through the barriers between different meridians and use a new tempering method to temper even more spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the new meridians. Foundation establishment cultivation techniques were naturally to break through the barriers of new meridians after reaching the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm and then cultivate in the new meridians. Chapter 1569. Strange. Xiao Hua scratched his head and thought to himself, if the 12th layer of Qi refining is said to have completely refined the meridians, then the meridians in Heavenly Law embodiment technique clearly haven't reached the end. It seems that there are still many more meridians in dragonization art. Why does vigorous thunderbolt require one to reopen different meridians in the lower dantian to cultivate? This was Xiao Hua. He was cultivating the dragonization art at the same time as cultivating a normal technique. Previously, he could sense the various meridians in the 11th layer of Qi refining. Moreover, he also knew that there were many interconnected meridians around these meridians. If it was someone else, how could they know? Could it be this Heavenly Law embodiment technique isn't a complete set of Qi refining techniques? Xiao Hua's heart skipped a beat as he suddenly thought of this. However, he immediately denied it. He had already read this technique from beginning to end. If it wasn't a complete technique, he would have already said it out loud. In other words, the possibility that Xiao Hua thought of didn't exist. Could it be behind this Heavenly Law embodiment technique, there are still unrecorded techniques? Xiao Hua suddenly quivered. An even more outrageous thought appeared in his mind. Only this thought could explain Xiao Hua's perception of those meridians when cultivating the dragonization art. What's wrong with me? Is it the heart devil of the 11th layer of Qi refining? After Xiao Hua's excitement, he immediately calmed down. Qi refining techniques had been cultivated for who knows how many years in the Xiaoyu continent. Who knows how many heavenly geniuses there were, and who knows how many people had extraordinary encounters. Everyone directly entered Foundation establishment after reaching the 12th layer of Qi refining. There had never been a person who cultivated to the 13th layer after reaching the 12th layer of Qi refining. Maybe I'm ignorant and inexperienced? I've never heard of it? Maybe those people were all geniuses who achieved great magical powers? But there are no records of them in the ancient records? Thinking of this, Xiao Hua put these things down. Right now, he was still some distance away from the peak of the 11th layer of Qi refining.
There was no need to delve into it now.
When he returned to Myriad Thunder Valley in the future, he would ask Xiangyang or Helplessness. If not, he would go to Thunder Palace's Technique Imparting Pavilion to investigate. In the following 10 months, Xiao Hua wholeheartedly focused on refining pills, taking pills, and increasing his cultivation. While refining pills, he also began to practice the Thunderlight Evasion technique and the driving techniques of magic tools. It was precisely as Xiao Hua had expected earlier. This Thunderlight flight technique was extremely profound, and it wasn't something common flying techniques could compare to. The first step to cultivating the Thunderlight flight technique required one to possess a lightning attribute physique. Only with this physique would one be able to sense the lightning attribute spirit energy within the spirit energy of heaven and earth, and only then would one be able to borrow the flexibility and strength of the lightning attribute spirit energy to cultivate the flight technique. Fortunately, Xiao Hua had already practiced fire escape and earth escape. Although this lightning escape technique wasn't a pure 5 elements escape technique, it was still within the 5 elements. Therefore, Xiao Hua had some difficulties practicing it, but he still gradually learned it. Among them, what Xiao Hua didn't understand the most was that he was actually able to sense the lightning attribute spiritual qi that troubled cultivators of other attributes. This was the most crucial step. As long as he took this step, his future path would be smooth and level. While Xiao Hua was practicing the lightning evasion technique in the Eastern Ridge, he was still thinking, could it be because of the thunder-devouring bead? There are flashes of lightning in my space from time to time. Maybe it has something to do with this? As for whether it was true or not, what did it matter? Xiao Hua was already gradually getting familiar with the first level of the Thunderlight flight technique. Furthermore, although the common method of refining magic tools was convenient, it also had its disadvantages. Different cultivation levels could refine different magic tools. With Xiao Hua's cultivation level, he couldn't refine high-level magic tools. Not to mention the magic tools used by late Foundation establishment stage cultivators in Xiaohua's space. Even the shadow moon Xiaohua that Ling Jingyi gave him couldn't be refined. Xiaohua used 10 months of effort to refine the triangular magic tool of Spirit Husbandry Sect and the palm-sized ring of Yan Yanwei. The magic tool of Spirit Husbandry Sect was an offensive and defensive magic tool. It could use the spiritual qi of heaven and earth to attack, and it could also form a protective barrier around the user. The most special thing was that it could change the outer appearance of the cultivator and conceal the ripples of the cultivator's magic power, achieving the goal of concealment. Xiaohua didn't know the name of this magic tool. Since it was his, he naturally had to give it his own name. Xiaohua scratched his head and thought for a long time before naming it Yichen. As for the palm-sized ring, it didn't have any offensive or defensive abilities. The only thing it could do was to see through the 5 elements. Yan Yanwei relied on this thing to see through the restrictions set up by Blood Shadow and Xiaohua's figure underground. Xiaohua named it Observe. Naturally, Xiaohua had also thought of using these magic tools to activate the Black Iron Needle. However, after looking at the sacrificial refining method, and then looking at the trick behind the Black Iron Needle, Xiaohua still decided to use the sacrificial refining method. In Xiaohua's space, there was a set of 2 soul-absorbing bells. Xiaohua felt that they were similar to the small hook soul tool and wanted to refine them. Unfortunately, the common refining method in Xiaohua's hand wasn't effective. He probably needed the refining method specifically used by Xiaonan's Cheng family. Seeing that he had cultivated all the techniques he could in the past year, and that his heavenly reflection technique had just reached the peak of the 11th level of the Qi refinement realm, Xiaohua couldn't help but be overjoyed. It wasn't just his cultivation that was effective. Xiaohua's refining of medicinal pills was also very smooth. Now, he could already produce 24 soul-absorbing pills in 1 furnace, which was barely enough for Xiaohua's nighttime cultivation speed. During the day, Xiaohua could only refine medicinal pills while practicing lightning escape and familiarizing himself with the magic tools. In addition, Little Huang and Little Silver in the space had also changed a lot. Let's talk about Little Huang first. A year ago, after swallowing Ken Mingwei's primordial spirit, it had fallen into a deep sleep. While sleeping, Xiaohua could clearly sense that Little Huang's injuries had healed. Half a year ago, Little Huang had woken up. Although it hadn't fully recovered, it looked a lot more spirited and could already slowly fly around in the space. As for Little Silver, he had rendered meritorious service in saving Xiaohua's life last time. Even his sharp teeth had been grinded until they bled, so how could Xiaohua not be grateful? When Little Dusk slept, Little Silver only moved within a range of several zhang and never took half a step out of the minefield. However, Little Silver's nose kept sniffing the spirit herbs. It was just that without Little Huang's permission, Little Silver didn't dare steal any. It wasn't until Little Huang woke up and told Xiaohua about this that Xiaohua found out that Little Silver could eat spirit herbs. Wasn't that simple? Xiaohua might not be willing to part with spirit stones, but he had as many spirit herbs as he wanted in the space. Xiaohua took out a piece of the extremely vast medicinal field in the space. There were some ordinary spirit herbs inside, just that they had been growing for a long time. He had Little Silver look for food in this medicinal field. Little Silver was very happy. It scurried around the entire herb field and rolled around casually, eating until its little belly was round and full. Little Yellow was also very happy to see this. AI, it's so good to be able to cultivate in peace. Xiaohua looked around the space from time to time and sighed with emotion. This scene was something he hadn't dared imagine when he was an itinerant cultivator. Alright, I've now reached the peak of the 11th level of Qi refinement. It's time for me to make a trip back to Myriad Thunder Valley. Admittedly, there's a rainbow epiphyllum in my space, but Shifu needs to go to Shuttling Thunder Hall to ask for another one. It'll be a waste if I don't take it. Xiaohua thought to himself. Also, it's time to ask Shifu about the cultivation technique. Let's see if I can go to Martial Arts Pavilion to find it now. Just as Xiaohua was about to pack up and leave, he thought again. Good, I almost forgot. It's almost a year's time, and that senior brother Jinming who came to Eastern Ridge to pick inflammation dawn grass is coming again. If I run off now, won't he have to return empty-handed again? Thus, after Xiao Hua picked enough inflammation dawn grass in advance, he calmly stayed in Eastern Ridge to refine pills and wait for Jinming's arrival. Almost a month's time passed. Sure enough, the command medallion in the space vibrated again. When Xiao Hua slightly released the restriction on the formation, a crimson-red messaging talisman flew in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. And he's finally here. Xiao Hua crushed the messaging talisman and flew into the air. He opened the formation and saw a thin and tall young cultivator with a trace of impatience on his face. He was precisely waiting in midair outside the formation. Xiao Hua carefully sized him up. This cultivator looked to be about 27 or 28 years old. He had long and narrow cheeks, extremely small eyes, a pair of extremely light eyebrows, and a few black spots on his deathly pale face. When the cultivator saw Xiao Hua come out to greet him, he didn't even salute. He very rudely called out, "Are you Xiao Hua?" Xiao Hua smiled and bowed. This disciple is indeed Xiao Hua. Is senior brother Jinming? Humph. Naturally, it's I. Jinming wasn't surprised. He sneered and said, "If it wasn't for I's bad luck, who would come to this Eastern Ridge medicinal garden?" Xiao Hua smiled apologetically and said, "This disciple was negligent last year and let senior brother Jinming accompany me to receive punishment. This disciple's heart truly feels apologetic. Don't say those useless things." Jinming unexpectedly didn't want to talk to him. "Where's this year's flame dawn grass? Don't tell me you still want I to personally go harvest it?" Xiao Hua smiled and said, "This naturally isn't necessary." As he spoke, he took out his storage pouch and handed it over. He said, "This disciple has already harvested this flame dawn grass long ago. Senior brother, please take a look." And Jinming slightly nodded. He took the pouch and opened it to take a look. He was somewhat astonished. "Your harvesting technique is quite brilliant," Xiao Hua replied. "This disciple is only of this little use. Otherwise, I wouldn't have come here so eagerly." "Good." Jinming only said one word. He took back the storage pouch and nodded. He said, "This year's matter is already done. You should properly take care of the medicinal garden." As he spoke, he seemed to have thought of something. He slapped his forehead and said, "That's right. Did you take a lot of seeds from the Thunder Flash Hall last year?" Xiao Hua replied, "Yes. Does senior brother need something?" "Naturally, I need to inspect it." Jinming pointed with his finger and said, "Open the formation. I want to see where you've planted these spirit grasses." Xiao Hua obeyed and opened the formation. He led Jinming to the place where he planted the spirit grasses. Chapter 1570. Looking at the flat herb garden and some small sprouts, Jinming nodded slightly, then lectured. "How can you grow other spirit herbs in this kind of place? I don't know what you're thinking. Disciple has nothing to do, so I want to see if I can grow other spirit herbs. If I can, that would be great, but if I can't, I'll just waste some seeds." "As you wish." Jinming waved his hand and was about to fly away when Xiao Hua stopped him. He patted his storage pouch and took out a few jade bottles and some spirit stones, then handed them over. He said very sincerely, "This is Disciple's 2 months' worth of provisions last year. Because of Disciple, senior brother Jinming was punished with a year's worth of provisions. Disciple knows that these provisions can't compare to senior brother's, but they are Disciple's good intentions, so please accept them."
Ah?
Jinming obviously didn't expect Xiao Hua to give him pills and spirit stones. He thought for a moment, then waved his hand, and the items fell into his hand. His pale face showed a trace of a smile, and said, "And since you have such thoughts, I won't be disrespectful." Seeing Jinming accept the pills, Xiao Hua's heart could be considered to have been put down. He smiled and said, "Farewell, senior brother Jinming." Good, we'll meet again next year," Jinming said as he flew into the air. However, after flying for a few dozen feet, he turned back and reminded, Oh right, Xiao Hua, I still haven't found the spare token for the Eastern Ridge Formation. Your formation isn't very safe, so you have to be careful. Thank you for the reminder, senior brother. Xiao Hua smiled and said, aside from flame dawn grass, there's only flame dawn grass here. It's far inferior to other herb gardens, so who would come here? Besides, disciple is only a chi refining disciple, and my cultivation is shallow. Others won't put me in their eyes. It's always better to be careful. Unfortunately, this spell formation is only for defensive purposes. It doesn't have any offensive capabilities. Otherwise, I forgot that there are 2 command medallions. Smiling wryly, Zhang Ming clasped hands and flew out of the Eastern Ridge, heading back to the Lightning Flash Temple. Seeing that Jinming had left, Xiao Hua smiled and said, this year's mission is over. I don't have anything to do for the next year. Looks like I have to make a trip to the Myriad Thunder Valley. After that, Xiao Hua tidied up a little, opened the formation, and used the lightning escape technique that he had just learned, and flew in the direction of the 10,000 Thunder Valley. The lightning evasion technique was indeed formidable. It was more than half as fast as Xiao Hua's flight technique. However, this lightning evasion technique consumed a lot of magic power. After flying for a while, Xiao Hua switched back to his original flight technique. Along the way, Xiao Hua was careful. He looked at the map while flying. As long as there were dangerous and forbidden areas, he would stay far away from them, so he didn't encounter any danger. On the contrary, along the way, they encountered a lot of aura refining and foundation building disciples. There was even a grandmaster in the gold core realm. Xiao Hua respectfully stopped for these seniors with profound cultivation bases and politely let them go first. He received quite a lot of smiles. Seeing his master's immortal's cave, Xiao Hua landed. That mountain ape immediately pounced out from the mountain forest. It stretched out its arms and revealed a pair of sharp claws to grab Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua frowned. He waved his hand and cast a confinement technique. The mountain ape was bound almost without any resistance. It fell to the ground in an instant and let out a roar. Immediately, 2 divine senses came from the helpless immortal's cave and Xiang Yang's immortal's cave, respectively. They scanned Xiao Hua's body. Of these 2 divine senses, Xiao Hua was very familiar with one of them. It was eldest senior brother Xiang Yang. He didn't encounter the other one. Since it wasn't helpless, then it should be Zhuominghui's. Sure enough, not long after the 2 divine senses were retracted, Xiang Yang flew over with a smile on his face. Seeing that Xiao Hua's cultivation base was already at the peak of the 11th layer of aura refining, he was very happy and said, little junior brother is indeed a genius. I haven't seen you for just a year, and you've made great progress. I can see that you're already a cultivator at the 12th layer of aura refining. Xiao Hua wryly smiled. Eldest senior brother, I'm suffering in the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden by myself. You didn't even come to see me. Otherwise, I might have already reached foundation establishment by now.
What?
Xiang Yang was surprised at first. Then he laughed out loud and said, you little brat, I was afraid of delaying your cultivation, so I didn't dare to go.
What's so hard about you?
After you reach foundation establishment, I'll ask my wife-in-law to help you find a suitable dual cultivation partner in the Thunder Palace. At that time, let's see if you'll still complain or not. Hearing this, Xiao Hua quickly waved his hand and said, forget it, eldest senior brother. Let me go find one myself. Who knows what kind of person my wife will find? Oh, little junior brother, you don't trust your wife's eyes? Yan Qinglian also flew over.
No.
Xiao Hua quickly said, I'm just joking with you, eldest senior brother. Little junior brother, your eldest senior brother is right. If you are interested, I should help you find a dual cultivation partner in the mythical Thunder Palace. It can't be. Xiao Hua was stunned and waved his hand even more hurriedly. Don't, senior sister. You 2 don't need to worry about this. Could it be that little junior brother already has a sweetheart? Yan Qinglian said with a smile. Eldest senior brother, where's master? This little brother has some questions about cultivation. Xiao Hua hurriedly turned his head and asked. Hearing Xiao Hua mention cultivation, Xiangyang also quickly replied, Master isn't in the cave today. He should be on duty in the Myriad Thunder Valley. If you have something urgent, I'll send you a summoning talisman. No need, no need. My matter isn't urgent. When will Master come back? He should be back by tomorrow. Xiangyang said with a smile, Master has been thinking about you for half a year. He said you used 2 months to cultivate from the 10th layer to the middle of the 11th layer. He hasn't seen you for half a year, so you must have cultivated to the 12th layer. Maybe I'll even cultivate to Foundation Establishment and give him a surprise. A voice came from the cave. It was Zhuo Minghui who walked out. Disciple greets mistress. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. He quickly stepped forward and bowed. Get up, good child. Zhuo Minghui waved her hand and helped Xiao Hua up. She looked him up and down and said with a smile, Although you haven't stepped into Foundation Establishment, cultivating to the peak of the 11th layer in a year is still commendable. Thank you for your praise, mistress. Xiao Hua said embarrassedly. Not being able to cultivate to the 12th layer might have disappointed Master. Let's go, Xiao Hua. Let's talk inside the cave. Zhuo Minghui said with a smile. Cultivation isn't something that can be done in a day. If the 10th layer can be cultivated to completion in 2 months, the 11th layer might take 2 years. Don't think too much. The 4 of them entered the cave and sat down. As usual, Yan Qinglian took out spiritual tea and spiritual fruits. After Xiao Hua ate some, Zhu Minghui asked, Xiao Hua, your medicinal garden in the Eastern Ridge. However, she only said half of what she wanted to say and didn't say anything else. Disciple understands. Xiao Hua said with a smile. He clapped his hands and took out a storage pouch, handing it to Zhu Minghui. This is disciple's gift to mistress. Mistress, please help me. Okay. Zhu Minghui liked Xiao Hua's cleverness very much. She opened the storage pouch and looked at the spiritual herbs used to concoct soul-gathering pills. She was very satisfied. The age of these things is quite good. They should be able to give you a satisfactory answer. As she said this, she put away the storage pouch. Xiao Hua accompanied Zhu Minghui and chatted for a while. Afterwards, he took his leave and followed Xiangyang back to their cave. After a while, Zhu Minghui flew out of the cave and headed towards mythical Thunder Palace. Xiao Hua and the other 2 sat down in the immortal cave. Xiangyang could wait to ask about Xiao Hua's cultivation. Xiao Hua's cultivation speed in this year could be considered normal, so he didn't hide anything and answered the general questions truthfully. After Xiangyang finished asking, Xiao Hua hesitated for a moment and also asked, Eldest senior martial brother, I have a question about Foundation Establishment cultivation methods. What? You still looked at the Foundation Establishment cultivation methods first? Xiangyang frowned. Didn't I already tell you about the Foundation Establishment cultivation methods? It's not suitable for you to look at now. I'm afraid it will affect your cultivation. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Eldest senior martial brother is thinking too much. I only looked at the meridians. I didn't look at any cultivation methods at all. So it's like that. Xiangyang's complexion relaxed a little. He nodded and said, Then what's the problem with the meridians? Xiao Hua bit his lips and asked with some hesitation, It's like this. I want to ask, why does the Foundation Establishment cultivation method start by refining the spiritual energy of heaven and earth in the new meridians? Why not continue to refine it in the previous meridians? The previous meridians? Xiangyang asked curiously. You've already used the previous meridians? If you don't open new meridians, how can you increase your cultivation? Little brother's meaning is, why don't you break through the barrier of the meridians and open up new meridians like the previous meridians of the Qi condensation realm, but instead return to the Dantian and open up new meridians? Xiao Hua explained. So the Qi refining meridians have already been used? How can you open new meridians? Xiangyang asked back. How do you know there aren't any new meridians? What if there are more? Xiao Hua smiled. There are still other meridians? Xiangyang was greatly surprised. He had never thought of this kind of question. Hearing it now was very refreshing. He simply didn't know how to answer Xiao Hua. But Yan Qinglian at the side clapped her hands and said, "He, youngest junior martial brother really knows how to think. This question is difficult for your eldest senior martial brother." Xiangyang also wanted to cry and laugh. He shook his head with all his strength. Youngest junior martial brother's thinking is really outrageous. I have no way to answer. Then, eldest senior martial brother, how do you know that the meridians have been refined to the end? That there won't be any new meridians? Xiao Hua wanted to get to the bottom of this. Youngest junior martial brother, you haven't cultivated to the peak of the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm. When you enter the foundation establishment realm, you'll know. The peak of the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm is different from the other layers of the Qi refining realm. Yan Qinglian looked at Xiangyang and smiled. Husband, you should tell youngest junior martial brother about your foundation establishment realm. Although it's a bit early to say it now, it's still better than him blindly guessing at the side, right? Chapter 1571. Yes, that's right. Xiangyang thought for a moment, then nodded and said, "This is something that can only be said before you build your foundation. But if you think blindly like this, it's very easy to damage your cultivation." Brother will now say a few simple things, so that you won't make a mistake. The specific things to pay attention to will have to wait until later. Moreover, I used 2 chances to build my foundation, so I should still tell you this lesson first. I'm all ears. Xiao Hua cupped his hands, very much enjoying the feeling of having someone give him pointers. Normally, after cultivating to the peak of each stage of Qi refinement, it's the process of reaching perfection. After making up for the gaps in the realm, a barrier will appear between the meridians. At this time, it depends on the amount of true Qi. If there's enough, then you can break through the barrier and enter the next level. Otherwise, your cultivation may forever stop at this level. Xiangyang explained simply, but what about the peak of the 12th layer of Qi refinement? It's different from these. When the cultivation method reaches perfection, the true Qi will naturally change, and there will be signs of liquefaction. At this time, you have to take a foundation establishment pill. This foundation establishment pill has 2 effects. One is to provide medicinal power to break through to foundation establishment, and the other is to help condense true Qi into a liquid state. Then, if you don't take a foundation establishment pill at this time and use other medicinal pills, or don't use medicinal pills at all? Xiao Hua suddenly asked. This, I don't know. Xiangyang said awkwardly. That day, when I built my foundation, I encountered the signs of liquefaction. I was ecstatic, so I quickly took a foundation establishment pill. It's just that. Xiangyang slightly sighed, looked at Yan Qinglian, who had a comforting smile on her face, and said again, "It's just that at that time, I was the only one in the Immortals' Cave in Myriad Thunder Valley. Master and Master's wife were nowhere to be found. Although I made some preparations, I only took 2 foundation establishment pills. My cultivation was still lacking, so 2 foundation establishment pills weren't enough to condense all the true Qi in my meridians into a liquid state. I barely managed to refine the 2 foundation establishment pills, and after I failed to break through to foundation establishment, I could only look on helplessly as the liquefied true Qi gradually reverted back to true Qi." Seeing the loneliness on Xiangyang's face, Xiao Hua smiled and said, "Eldest senior brother, then have you ever regretted it?" Xiao Hua had already asked this question before, but now that he asked it again, it must be interesting. Xiangyang looked at Yan Qinglian. The 2 people's eyes were filled with affection. Indeed, in this place, silence speaks louder than words. After waiting for a short moment, Xiao Hua coughed and asked again. "Eldest senior brother, then what happened after that?" After that, I cultivated in seclusion for another 50 years. Just as I was about to lose all hope, the true Qi in my meridians suddenly showed signs of liquefying. At that time, I had 10 building foundation dawn in my storage pouch. So, I immediately suppressed the ecstasy in my heart and refined them one by one. Finally, all the true qi in my meridians was transformed into true elemental energy. Xiangyang lightly said. That's strange. Eldest senior brother, you haven't consumed any other medicinal pills in the past 50 years? You didn't take another foundation establishment pill? Xiaohua asked curiously. In his opinion, since his magic power wasn't enough, he should have just taken some medicine. Who cared about medicinal pills? However, Xiangyang shook his head. My Imperial Thunder Sect only has medicinal pills for those in the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm. We don't have any medicinal pills for those who failed to build their foundation. Moreover, after Master came back, he only urged me to cultivate according to the cultivation method and didn't allow me to take any medicinal pills. As for why, I don't know. Oh, Xiao Hua slightly nodded. He also knew that with Xiangyang's honest temperament, he would have absolutely followed the arrangement. He wouldn't have deviated even a little bit. Then, what about the accumulating spirit talisman? Eldest senior brother didn't use it? Xiao Hua suddenly thought. Accumulating spirit talisman? Xiangyang smiled bitterly. He looked at Yan Qinglian and said, Not only me, but even your senior sister-in-law has never used it. Little junior brother, ordinary cultivators, as long as they have the chance to build their foundation, they would do it without any regard for their lives. Who would be willing to stay in the Qi refining realm? Yan Qinglian said with a smile, Only those heaven-sent geniuses who are extremely confident in building their foundation and are willing to take this risk to use the accumulating spirit talisman. As I said just now, the great circle of Qi refining is the natural perfection of the cultivation method. This is also commonly known as the small circle of Qi refining. If you use the accumulating spirit talisman, you can use the power of the talisman to forcefully delay the advancement of your realm and make the small circle of Qi refining even more perfect. That's the true great circle of Qi refining. Xiangyang said somewhat enviously. It's said that after cultivators at the great circle of Qi refining enter the foundation establishment realm, their magic power is 30% stronger than cultivators of the same realm. The most powerful ones might be 50% stronger.
Ah.
That much? Xiao Hua was slightly astonished. Of course. Otherwise, how could those extremely intelligent people stay in the Qi refining realm? Xiangyang smacked his lips and said, That's not all. Qi refining's divine sense is in the nurturing stage. The longer it's nurturing, the more room it has for growth in the future. Think about it, if your magic power is 50% stronger than people of the same realm, and your divine sense is also 50% stronger than people of the same realm, then how awe-inspiring is that? Tisich, that's not awe-inspiring. Xiao Hua curled his lips in his heart. Although he was currently in the 11th layer of the Qi refining realm, killing someone in the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm wasn't a problem. This wasn't the same concept as people of the same realm. Little junior brother will enter the foundation establishment realm in a few years. Master and Master's wife are also in Myriad Thunder Valley. If there are no mishaps, little junior brother should have no problem entering the foundation establishment realm. Xiangyang comforted him. You just need to cultivate peacefully, and don't think too much. Yes, disciple understands. Xiao Hua bowed and said. Soon after, the three of them talked about something and closed their eyes to cultivate. They waited until noon the next day, but Helpless still hadn't returned. Xiao Hua wasn't in a hurry. He listened to Helpless talk about the taboos and experiences of Qi refining. Listening to it made him scratch his ears and cheeks. Xiao Hua had never thought of these things before, but after trying them out, they were indeed useful. Just as they were talking, a crimson summoning talisman flew into the immortals' cave. It was Zhuo Minghui calling them over. Xiao Hua and the others arrived at Helpless Immortals' cave. As soon as they saw each other, Zhuo Minghui smiled and handed over a storage pouch. Xiao Hua opened it in surprise. When he saw the soul-gathering pills and a lot of spirit stones inside, he couldn't help but feel extremely grateful. He said with a choked voice, Master's wife, you. I had nothing to do yesterday, so I went to Mythical Thunder Palace to see my senior sisters whom I haven't seen for a long time. and they praised your medicinal herbs very much. After exchanging them for spiritual pills, they also gave you some spirit stones. You should take them. Zhua Minghui waved her hand as if she really was going to see her senior sisters, and exchanging them for spiritual pills was just a passing matter. Thank you, Master's wife. Xiaohua nodded and put them away. Haha, a divine sense swept past. It was Helpless who had returned from outside. Master, Xiangyang and Yan Qinglian stood up and shouted. Xiaohua naturally also stood up. Helpless ignored Xiangyang and Yan Qinglian. He only looked at Xiaohua and said, "How come you're only at the peak of the 11th layer of the Qi refining realm? I thought you'd already cultivated to the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm." Xiaohua was quite displeased with Helpless' snobbery and said embarrassedly, "Disciple is actually quite stupid. I was barely able to cultivate to the 11th layer of the Qi refining realm."
Oh,
Why are you suddenly saying that? Helpless said angrily. You're the hope of my myriad Thunder Valley. If you don't build your foundation, I'll crush you to death. Husband, Yan Qinglian said with a frown. If you say that, how will Xiaohua feel? If he doesn't build his foundation, won't he be your disciple? If you don't want him, I'll take him as my disciple.
Hee.
Helpless, he rubbed his hands and said, I'm just afraid he'll be like Xiangyang. Soon after, he clapped his hands helplessly and took out a jade box from his storage bag. He tossed it to Xiaohua and asked, Have you seen this secret technique to catalyze your divine sense? Xiaohua took the jade box. He was originally at a loss, but when he heard Helpless' question, he immediately understood what was inside the jade box. He smiled and said, Disciple has just cultivated to the 11th layer of the Qi refining realm, so I haven't had time to see the secret technique yet. Then he raised the jade box and said, Is this the rainbow cloud? Humph, rainbow cloud my ass. Helplessly eating a mouthful of spirit fruit, he spat the core on the ground and cursed, This year, my Thunder Palace originally had a rainbow epiphyllum that had just matured, but it was snatched by Zhenyu, that old brat, one step ahead of us, saying that it was for his disciple, Zhen Yuqian. Motherfucker, this guy is really shameless. That disciple named Wang Yunxiao was clearly chosen by me first, and I even marked him with my divine sense. This old bastard actually took Wang Yunxiao away and treated him as his disciple. Unfortunately, they've already registered in the Jade Archive Hall, otherwise Speaking up to here, he looked helplessly at Xiaohua and said, Xiaohua, Wang Yunxiao is already at the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm. You have to work harder. You have to build your foundation before him. Oh, even if you can't be the first, you can't fall too far behind. Xiaohua was speechless. He bowed and said, Disciple understands. Then he said, If this jade box isn't the rainbow cloud, then what is it? Nonsense. If it's not the rainbow cloud, then it's the Jade Qilin spirit. Jade Qilin spirit. Xiaohua was puzzled. When he opened the jade box, he saw something similar to a taro inside. It's just that this taro was like jade, and the layers of scales on top were like fish scales. Master, little junior brother is a rogue cultivator. He doesn't know about this. Xiangyang reminded. AI, rogue cultivator. Xiaohua said helplessly. He waved his hand and said, You tell him. Little junior brother. Xiangyang said with a smile. It's actually very simple. This Jade Qilin spirit is the same as the rainbow cloud. They both have the ability to stimulate divine sense. It's just that the rainbow cloud is too rare. It's not easy to find one. In comparison, this Jade Qilin spirit is much more abundant. Many cultivation families use this Jade Qilin spirit for their disciples to stimulate divine sense. However, the Jade Qilin spirit's effect is much worse than the rainbow cloud. Oh, so it's like that. Xiaohua put away the jade box and said with a smile, Thank you, Master. No need to thank me. No need to thank me. If there's nothing else, just go back and cultivate. Come see me when you've built your foundation. Xiaohua waved his hand helplessly. Disciple has a few questions. After I ask Master, I'll immediately return, Xiaohua said with a smile. Quickly ask, quickly ask. Hee, master, little junior brother is very talented. Xiangyang was afraid that Xiaohua would get angry, so he quickly said, disciple doesn't know how to answer the questions he asked. Is that so? Why don't you tell me? Xiaohua looked at Xiaohua with surprise. Xiangyang gave Xiaohua a look, telling him not to say anything. He then repeated Xiaohua's question. Sure enough, Xiaohua immediately jumped up and said, damn it, I showed you the foundation establishment cultivation method, so you could go to the technique imparting pavilion and find an even higher level cultivation method than this one. You're actually looking for fun here. Don't you want to build your foundation? It can't be? Xiaohua muttered. Beside him, Zhuo Minghui stopped him again and said, husband, this child is very curious. It's good that he can think more. You should talk to him. Don't let him go down the wrong path. A disciple is as boring as a rock. I just took in one and he's like the mountain ape at the door. How can I be so unlucky? Xiaohua sighed helplessly. He thought for a moment and said, actually, it's nothing. Think about it. Before the 12th layer of qi refining, can every cultivator break through to the next realm by taking medicinal pills? Of course not. Xiaohua seemed to have thought of something. Then why can't they advance even if they take medicinal pills? Xiaohua asked helplessly. Xiaohua smiled and said, it must be the meridians, right? You're quite smart. Xiaohua glared at him helplessly. Meridians are the foundation of cultivation. All true qi and true essence are formed by refining the spiritual energy of heaven and earth through the meridians. Everyone's cultivation process is also the process of refining the meridians themselves. If the meridian's ability to refine has already reached its limit, do you think, even if there are more medicinal pills and more spiritual energy, it can still be refined? Disciple understands. It must be that after reaching the peak of the 12th layer of qi refining, the meridian's ability to refine true qi has also reached its peak. It can no longer produce more true qi. If one can't build their foundation in time, then their magic power can no longer increase? Xiaohua continued.
Exactly.
Of course, this is the case for your eldest senior brother. What's the use of taking medicinal pills? He just needs to carefully comprehend his realm. If fate allows it, won't he be able to enter the foundation establishment realm? Xiaohua looked helplessly at Xiangyang and said, unfortunately, the difference between the second and the first time is too great. His achievements will always be limited. But master, doesn't the accumulating spirit talisman also force one's realm? Xiaohua asked. You don't know shit. The accumulating spirit talisman doesn't force one's realm. It forces one's true qi to transform into true essence. That was the first time he built his foundation. He only used the accumulating spirit talisman's magic power to prolong the process as much as possible. During this prolonged process, because true essence is together with true qi for a long time, it will undergo a certain mutation. On the other hand, it can refine the meridians that were refined during the qi refining stage again with true essence, increasing the strength of the meridians. After entering the foundation establishment realm, one can have a few % more true essence than others. So that's how it is. Xiaohua finally understood. So there were so many reasons behind this. However, the accumulating spirit talisman is admittedly a good thing. Xiaohua helplessly said, but using the accumulating spirit talisman still has a great risk. Chapter 1572. When using the accumulating spirit talisman, if there's even the slightest bit of carelessness, the liquefied true essence will begin to transform back into true qi. That's not good. All of your previous efforts will be wasted. At best, you'll be beaten back to your original state and have to wait for the second foundation building. At worst, your meridians won't be able to hold too much true qi. Your meridians may break, and your Tao will perish. Helplessly speaking, he looked at Xiaohua and said, now that you know, do you still want to use the accumulating spirit talisman? Why not? If others can use it, I can also use it, Xiaohua said without hesitation. Being competitive is the most undesirable thing in cultivation. Helplessly shaking his head. Fine. I'm just being competitive. Xiaohua secretly said, You want me to build my foundation earlier, but you don't want me to be competitive. Helplessly thinking, he said, It's still early. Wait until you reach the 12th layer of qi refining. If your true qi is vigorous, then use it. If it's not, then you should just build your foundation. I'll listen to master's instructions. Xiaohua bowed and said. Soon after, Xiaohua asked a few more questions, especially those about divine sense and the Naiwen Palace. Helplessly answering them all one by one. Don't look at Helplessly's impatient temper and somewhat irritable. In the aspect of cultivation, Helplessly was really amazing. When he talked about some cultivation experiences, Helplessly was very familiar with them. He explained the profound in simple terms and drew inferences about other things from one example, and so on. Helplessly, he got so excited that he stopped cultivating. He only talked about the stars in the night sky and welcomed the rising sun. Only then did he stop talking endlessly. Under Xiao Hua's worshipful gaze, he helplessly waved his hand and had Xiao Hua leave. Xiangyang and Yan Qinglian also followed him out. Before leaving, Xiangyang couldn't help but repeatedly exhort, Junior Martial Brother, this foundation establishment is really extremely difficult. You must not let your emotions affect your decisions. If there's anything I can help you with, you must tell me. Xiao Hua knew this was Xiangyang's concern. After thinking for a while, he said with a smile, How about this? If senior brother is willing, how about you protect me while I build my foundation?
Great.
A smile appeared on Xiangyang's face. This was exactly what he wanted. However, when a cultivator in the 12th layer of the aura refining realm entered the foundation building realm, it was also the time when they were at their weakest. It was impossible for an ordinary person to be by their side. Although Xiangyang was Xiao Hua's eldest senior martial brother, according to reason, he should be by Xiao Hua's side as a protector. But Xiao Hua, after all, didn't receive Xiangyang's guidance since childhood. If he took the initiative to say it, it might not necessarily be somewhat reckless, and it also wouldn't be in line with Xiangyang's timid nature. Now that Xiao Hua mentioned it without the slightest hesitation, it naturally meant that he didn't regard Xiangyang as an outsider. How could Xiangyang not be happy? However, Junior Brother still has a few years to go before he reaches the peak of the 12th layer of the qi refining realm. Right now, we should break through the bottleneck of the 11th layer of the qi refining realm and see if we can generate divine sense. Otherwise, we can only use the jade Kirin fruit to accelerate the process. Xiangyang said with a smile. Yes, I will listen to eldest senior brother's orders. Xiao Hua cupped his hands and said, I'll return to the eastern ridge to cultivate first. If there's anything, I'll inform eldest senior brother. Soon after, Xiao Hua leaped into the air and flew towards the eastern mountain range. However, in the time it took to smoke a cigarette, Xiao Hua changed his mind. After a slight hesitation, he flew towards the shocking Thunder Palace. Along the way, Xiao Hua saw that there was no one around. He used the lightning escape technique and arrived in front of the Yanlei Palace in just a few hours. At this time, the Yanlei Palace was different from the last time. Although it was floating in the clouds, there was a long ladder that snaked downwards from the entrance of the Yanlei Palace. Inside the clouds, the Yanlei Palace actually emitted a faint lightning glow, causing the surroundings to flicker. Is today the time to impart the technique? Xiao Hua thought as his figure landed on the ladder. The ladder was also mysterious. Just as Xiao Hua's figure landed and was about to lift his leg to walk up, the ladder actually moved up by itself. Xiao Hua didn't need to move at all. His figure slowly walked towards the entrance of the Yanlei Palace. This is really interesting, Xiao Hua thought to himself. When he arrived at the entrance of the Yanlei Palace, it was a tall palace that looked no different from the Shualei Palace. Just as Xiao Hua was about to enter, an early-stage foundation establishment cultivator came out of the palace. He looked at Xiao Hua up and down, then used his divine sense to scan him. He frowned and scolded. Where's your waste token? Why did you only come now? The technique imparting disciple has already been preaching for several hours. I'm afraid it's nearing the end. How can you step into the foundation establishment realm with this kind of slack? Xiao Hua smiled apologetically, took out his token and said, Senior, please know that disciple's errand job is in the Eastern Mountain Range. It's very far from here. Yesterday, I couldn't stay in the shocking Thunder Palace, so I came late today. When the cultivator heard that Xiao Hua was in the Eastern Mountain Range, his face slightly changed. He took the token, scanned it with his divine sense, and handed it back. Quickly go in. The East Side Palace is preaching about the art of medicine. It's useful for you. You can go and listen. The West Side Palace is preaching about the foundation of techniques. It's also useful for new disciples like you. Yes, disciple understands. Thank you for the reminder, Senior. Xiao Hua bowed and entered the Yanlei Palace. Xiao Hua curiously looked at the main hall. The main hall of the Evolved Thunder Palace seemed to be different from the Bright Thunder Palace and the Spring Thunder Palace. The main hall wasn't big, it was square-shaped, and in the middle there was a square pillar standing from top to bottom. The four sides of the main hall, as well as the roof above and the ground below, were all covered with many runes. These runes were engraved with intelligence and seemed to have a profound meaning. On the square pillar, there were countless tiny lightning threads flashing. These countless lightning threads formed different runes that moved around the entire pillar in a very orderly manner. This pillar looks a lot like a jade slip. Thinking about this, Xiao Hua released his perception and used his divine sense to read the jade slip to step into the pillar.
Boom.
When Xiao Hua's perception entered the pillar, a rumbling sound came from the jade slip. Xiao Hua didn't feel like he was looking at the jade slip. Instead, he felt the same as when he entered the illusion array. After a rumbling sound, a towering mountain range appeared in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. This mountain range was completely crimson. Before Xiao Hua could think of anything else, a tall and thin cultivator with white hair and beard, wearing a red Taoist robe, descended from the sky and landed on the Crimson Mountain Range. Xiao Hua couldn't see through that cultivator's cultivation. Who is this? Following Xiao Hua's puzzlement, that cultivator patted his hand and took out a bead that was similar to the thunder-devouring bead from his storage pouch. Thunder-devouring bead? Xiao Hua was shocked. However, when he looked carefully, this thunder-devouring bead was even smaller than the one he had. Moreover, there were no lightning sparks around the bead. However, Xiao Hua could clearly see that there were countless lightning sparks lingering inside the small bead. Immediately after, the cultivator threw the thunder-devouring bead into the air and then grabbed it with his hand. As the cultivator slowly raised his hand, a large ball of lightning appeared from the thunder-devouring bead. As the cultivator raised his hand, the large ball of lightning flew into the air. Immediately after, the cultivator kept making hand seals. Every hand seal seemed to be played down, but wherever the hand seals were cast, a hurricane would appear in the air. Moreover, as the hand seals were cast, the lightning sparks emitted a dazzling brilliance. After a while, the cultivator opened his mouth and spat out a light purple brilliance into the lightning sparks. Suddenly, the lightning sparks emitted an extremely bright brilliance and gradually expanded. When it was about 100 feet wide, the cultivator pointed his finger, and the lightning sparks slowly fell and sank into the Crimson Mountain Range. The cultivator's figure also disappeared along with the lightning sparks. Ancestor Qianyan? Xiao Hua instantly understood that this cultivator was the founder of the Imperial Thunder Sect, Qianyan. Sure enough, a moment later, a purple light shone from under the mountain range and spread in all directions like a ring. Ancestor Qianyan's figure suddenly appeared from the mountain range and kept making hand seals. The brilliance flashed continuously in the mountain range. As the brilliance went away, heavy dark clouds pressed down from the sky, and countless thin lightning sparks fell below the brilliance. Ancestor Qianyan's figure was like a god. Damn it, Ancestor is really awe-inspiring, Xiao Hua secretly said. Immediately after, Xiao Hua's eyes darkened again. When he could see clearly again, there were countless disciples on the mountain range and countless tall and majestic palaces. It was the current appearance of the Imperial Thunder Sect. Just when Xiao Hua didn't know how to retreat, the image of Ancestor Qian Yun appeared in front of him again. "Greetings, Ancestor." Xiao Hua didn't dare to neglect and hurriedly bowed. Ancestor Qian Yun ignored him and just flicked his sleeve. Xiao Hua's figure suddenly rose up and fell into the palace in the clouds in midair.
Ah,
Isn't this the Yanlei Palace? Xiao Hua was stunned, but when he was in a daze, he saw a tall and thin cultivator standing in front of the pillar of the Yanlei Palace. He looked very lost. Damn. Seeing the tall and thin figure, Xiao Hua's heart moved. This seems to be, before he could even think about it, his figure merged with the tall and skinny figure. Then, Xiao Hua's eyes shook slightly. When he opened his eyes, he had already retracted his perception. In front of him was still that pillar of lightning with restrained light. Xiao Hua shook his head. He really couldn't distinguish whether he was in an illusion or in reality. He wanted to bite his finger to distinguish, but he felt that it was a bit embarrassing. At this moment, the door to the east side hall opened, and an early Foundation establishment cultivator walked out. He looked up at Xiao Hua, who was standing in front of a pillar. His gaze swept over him, and without stopping, he walked into the inner hall. Behind that cultivator, dozens of aura refining disciples rushed out. These disciples were of different ages and cultivation levels, ranging from the 4th layer to the 12th layer of aura refining. Huh? Xiao Hua. A very familiar voice sounded. Chapter 1573. Hearing someone call out his name in surprise, Xiao Hua smiled and looked at the group of disciples coming out of the side chamber. Among the many male disciples, there were 20 or so female disciples. They all had flower-like faces and were wearing colorful clothes. Not only did they attract Xiao Hua's gaze, the gazes of the 100 or so young male disciples also fell on them from time to time. In front of the 20 or so female disciples, there were 2 female cultivators who were about the same height. One had a round face, round and smooth like a pearl, and the other had an oval face, looking elegant. The one who called out to Xiao Hua was the round and smooth Shueshue. Hearing Shueshue call out Xiao Hua's name, the gazes of the 100 or so disciples all fell on Xiao Hua. The eyes of the cold and elegant female cultivator beside Shueshue also flashed with a trace of astonishment. Seeing everyone's gazes fall on him, Xiao Hua felt slightly uncomfortable. He couldn't help but raise his hand to touch his nose and said with a bitter smile, "Shueshue, long time no see, how are you?" Seeing Xiao Hua's somewhat lazy movements, Shueshue couldn't help but feel her heart beat faster. Her face was actually a bit hot, and her voice was much softer than before. She replied, I'm very good, how about you?" Seeing Shueshue like this, the hearts of the surrounding male disciples became bleak. In an instant, their gazes were like flying swords, piercing Xiao Hua's body. Xiao Hua looked around and sneered in his heart. He took a few steps forward and said with a smile, "Look at I's spirited appearance. How could I not be good?" Not only did Shueshue's face smile, but the surrounding dozen or so female disciples also covered their mouths and giggled. Junior Sister Shue, is this the Xiao Hua you often mention?" The cold and elegant female cultivator beside her also had a rare smile on her face. She moved closer to Shueshue's ear and whispered, "And it's him?" Shueshue's voice was like a mosquito. "This Xiao Hua is really amazing. Previously you said he was only in the middle of the 10th level of qi refining. Look, it's only been a little over a year and he's actually at the peak of the 11th level of qi refining." The female cultivator's voice was indifferent, but traces of competitiveness could be heard.
Ah,
Is that so?" As soon as Shueshue saw Xiao Hua, her heart was filled with joy. How could she pay attention to his cultivation level? When she heard what her senior sister said, she promptly raised her head. Wasn't Xiao Hua at the peak of the 11th layer of qi refining? Junior brother Xiao. Right at this moment, Another voice sounded from behind the crowd. When Xiaohua looked up, he saw Wang Yunxiao, Min Ge, Yuan Bo, and the others. Xiaohua looks at the dozen or so 10th and 11th layer qi refining disciples clustered behind these three people. He says with a smile, "Hello, three senior martial brothers. Long time no see. Both of you are in the 12th layer of qi refining. I'm truly envious." Wang Yunxiao took a few steps forward, cupped his fists, and said, "Same here. We've all advanced from the middle of the 11th layer to the middle of the 12th layer, and junior martial brother Xiao has also advanced from the middle of the 10th layer to the peak of the 11th layer. Junior martial brother Xiao, you've made great progress." Xiaohua cupped his fists in return and said, "That's incomparable. That's incomparable. I still don't know when I'll be able to step into the 12th layer." Min Ge and Yuan Bo glanced at Xiaohua, then shifted their gazes to Shui and the other female cultivator. Seeing the two whispering to each other and occasionally glancing at Xiaohua, their eyes were filled with displeasure. They glanced at each other again, then smiled and said, "Congratulations, junior martial brother Xiao. You've finally broken free from the hardships of being a loose cultivator." Congratulations to you too." Xiaohua didn't understand why they would mention loose cultivators like this, so he only replied with a smile. Everyone came out of the side hall. Some people walked past Xiaohua, but there were also quite a few people who stopped and looked at Xiaohua and the others with interest. But when they heard that Xiaohua was a loose cultivator, their eyes immediately revealed a kind of disdain. They raised their pauses again, and each of them dispersed. Apart from a few younger disciples behind Shui, the rest of the female disciples also left one after another. The cold and elegant female cultivator rolled her eyes a few times, then smiled and said, Shui, since you've met an old friend, you might as well wait here for a moment. I will return to Sun Lei Palace first." "Don't," Shui was a bit anxious. She grabbed the female cultivator's sleeve and said, "Senior martial sister Shui, don't be anxious. This disciple will leave after saying a few words to him." When Wang Yunxiao saw this, his gaze slightly swept over Min Ge and Yuan Bo. He cupped his fists and said to Xiaohua, "Junior martial brother Xiao, you and I live very close to each other. Although we haven't seen each other for a long time, if you return to fledgling Thunder Peak, you'd better send me a sound transmission talisman. Your old friend is still here, so I won't take up any more of your time." With that said, he nodded and walked away. Min Ge and Yuan Bo didn't seem to want to leave. However, when they saw that Wang Yunxiao had left, followed by a few male disciples, they also cupped their fists towards Xiaohua with extreme helplessness. Then, they nodded towards Shui and the others and left Sun Lei Palace. Before leaving, they viciously looked back. But at this time, Xiaohua didn't see it, because Shui pulled the cold and elegant female disciple in front of Xiaohua and said with a smile, "Xiaohua, this is my senior martial sister. Her name is Sun Shu. Greetings, senior martial sister Shui." Xiaohua had a smile on his face. He bowed and said, "This disciple has seen senior Sun Ming's elegant demeanor at Spring Thunder Palace. I really envy you all. How about senior martial brother Xiao also enter our Sun Lei Palace?" A few female disciples behind Shui, who looked exceptionally intelligent, said with a smile, Go, you all wait outside the palace." Shui waved her hand, looking like a senior martial sister. Yes, we will obey senior martial sister Shui's orders." Those female disciples smiled like flowers and ran out of Sun Lei Palace. "Xiaohua, I heard you went to the Eastern Ridge Her Garden?" Shui blinked her large eyes and looked at Xiaohua with great concern. "That place is so far away from Sun Lei Palace, and also not close to Zhen Lei Palace. Why did you choose that place? The Eastern Ridge Her Garden?" Sun Shu was also stunned. Her beautiful eyes looked at Xiaohua and said very strangely, "Wasn't that herb garden abandoned long ago? Even if you want to look after the spirit herbs, you don't have to go to the Eastern Ridge." Xiaohua scratched his head and said, "I don't know how to craft talismans, nor do I know how to refine pills. I also don't want to do other chores, So, I naturally chose the easy job of looking after them. Moreover, I was born as a loose cultivator. If others look down on me, I might as well stay far away from them and save myself the trouble. Junior Marshall Brother Xiao says it so easily. I'm afraid you have ulterior motives, right? Sun Shu said with a smile. Won't you know once you see fellow Taoist Zhao's cultivation increase? Oh? Haha, Xiao Hua laughed and didn't explain. He looked at the side hall behind Xue Xue and said curiously, This is my Zhenlei Palace's Yanlei Palace. Why did Sun Lei Palace's disciples come to listen to a technique imparting disciples lecture? Xue Xue covered her mouth and laughed. Senior Marshall Brother Xiao, have you never heard of a technique imparting disciples lecture? On the first day of every month, disciples of each Thunder Palace can go to other Thunder Palaces to listen to lectures. Senior Marshall's sister Sun had a sudden impulse, so we came to Zhenlei Palace. I didn't expect. What and what? Xue Xue. Sun Shu retorted from the side. Wasn't it your idea to come to Zhenlei Palace? What does it have to do with I? And you bumped into that Yuan Bo as soon as you arrived and even asked him about something in a low voice.
So you were asking about this?
Sun Shu continued. Senior Marshall sister. Xue Xue said coquettishly with a burning face. At this time, at the entrance of Yanlei Palace, several Sun Lei Palace's disciples who just went out poked their heads out and shouted, Senior Marshall's sister Xue, the palace sent a message telling us to go back earlier. Xue Xue heard, and her face turned cold. She said to Xiao Hua, The palace is urging me, so I won't say much to you. If you have nothing to do, send me a message too. Last time, you actually didn't tell me you were in Dongling. Haha, I was afraid of delaying your cultivation. Xiao Hua touched his nose and laughed. Just remember it in the future. Okay. Xue Xue laughed and pulled Sun Shu's hand to leave quickly. She still turned her head halfway. Don't forget. I know. Go quickly. Xiao Hua grinned and waved his hand a few times. After leaving Yanlei Palace, Xue Xue and the others flew into the air. Sun Shu suddenly asked in a low voice, Xue Xue, this Xiao Hua seems to be very mysterious? Mysterious? Xue Xue was slightly stunned and said very strangely, I've known him for so long, but I didn't feel it. Haha, you're in this mountain, so deep in the clouds you don't know. Sun Shu laughed. Look at him. He doesn't even know that the disciples of the Thunder Palace are taught by each other. It's like this is the first time he came to Yanlei Palace, and he's never listened to the teachings of the senior brothers before. Think about it, he's a loose cultivator, but now he actually used more than a year to cultivate from the middle of the 10th level to the peak of the 11th level. Although he can't be considered outstanding in my Thunder Palace, it's still impressive. If he's not mysterious, who is? Xue Xue shook her head. Maybe his master taught him more? Who's Xiao Hua's master? Sun Shu shook his head. You also know that before we build foundation, our masters rarely give us pointers, and he's a loose cultivator, so his master's pointers are even less. Xiao Hua's master's name is helplessness. Xue Xue said. Even if it's not his master's pointers, maybe it's his senior brother's. Helplessness? Sun Shu was stunned. Then the corners of his mouth rose. He said with a smile, Then I know who Xiao Hua's senior brother is? Who? Xue Xue asked curiously. Is his senior brother very famous? Then the two people's topic of conversation changed from Xiao Hua to Xiangyang's story, back to Xiao Hua. After watching Xue Xue and the others leave, he took a step forward and walked towards a closed door on his left. When he arrived in front of the door, Xiao Hua tilted his head to listen. It was very quiet inside, without any sound. So Xiao Hua stretched out his hand and gently pushed. The door quietly opened. Suddenly, a clear voice entered Xiao Hua's ears. Through the half-closed door, Xiao Hua saw a rather large side hall with several hundred disciples. These disciples were all sitting in a circle on the ground. In front of the center, a foundation-building cultivator was sitting cross-legged on a praying mat. He was stretching out a hand and slowly forming hand seals. Listening to the cultivator's voice, it seemed like he was chanting some kind of spell. Xiaohua thought for a moment, then quietly walked in. He closed the door behind him and walked behind the outermost disciple. He also sat cross-legged and listened to the cultivator's lecture in front of him. After listening for a while, Xiaohua could tell that the cultivator was talking about the minor confinement art. It was a spell that 10th and 11th layer qi refining cultivators could use. After talking for a while, the cultivator stopped and called a disciple to demonstrate. Unfortunately, that disciple didn't seem to be proficient. He waved his hand several times but still couldn't cast the minor confinement art. Seeing bean-sized beads of sweat dripping from his forehead, the foundation building's senior brother sneered and said, "Sit down. In the future, when you listen to lectures, you have to pay attention." When that disciple sat down with a flushed face, the foundation building cultivator unexpectedly looked at Xiaohua. Oh no! Xiaohua was slightly startled. Sure enough, the foundation building senior brother pointed at him and said, "What's your name? Stand up." Xiaohua smiled bitterly in his heart. He stood up and bowed, saying, "Disciple Xiaohua greets Senior. Are you a disciple of my Thunderclap Palace?" "Yes." "Then that's strange. How come I have never seen you before? Moreover, today, you actually came in right after I was about to finish my lecture. You don't know I's temper? That disciple is on duty at the Eastern Ridge's medicinal garden. It's really too far from my Thunderclap Palace, so disciple asked for the steward's order to cultivate on my own in the Eastern Ridge." Xiaohua said very apologetically, "This is disciple's first time listening to a lecture. I really don't understand Senior's rules." And that cultivator obviously knew how far the Eastern Ridge was. He waved his hand and said, "Since you came, then you have to understand. Did you understand what I said just now?" "Disciple understands." "Good. You can cast it and see." Hearing this, Xiaohua waved his hand and deliberately made the wrong hand seal. That minor confinement art naturally couldn't be used. That cultivator shook his head slightly and gave a few pointers. Xiaohua listened. It was precisely the part he made the wrong hand seal. After correcting it, he cast the minor confinement art. "And not much. Your comprehension is quite high." That foundation establishment cultivator nodded and said, "Admittedly, you're on duty at the Eastern Ridge, but you also have to prioritize cultivation. If you have free time, it's better to come back and listen to lectures more often." "Yes, disciple understands," Xiaohua said respectfully. "All right, that's all for today. 10 days later, I will lecture on palm lightning again." Finished speaking, that cultivator stood up. All the disciples opened up a path and bowed, saying, "Respectfully see Senior off." "Forget it." That cultivator flicked his sleeves and walked out of the side chamber, with quick steps. Xiaohua was right behind everyone, so he was naturally the first to come out of the side chamber. Seeing that cultivator walking towards the inner hall, he immediately ran 2 steps forward and said in a low voice, "Senior, disciple has something to ask." That cultivator turned his head to look at Xiaohua and said with a smile, "If there's anything you don't understand about the technique I taught today, I can naturally answer. Previous ones? Forgive I for not answering." "I dare not." Disciple just wants to ask Senior where our Thunderclap Palace's technique imparting pavilion is. Xiaohua said respectfully. "Technique imparting pavilion? What are you going there for?" That cultivator looked at Xiaohua and said curiously, "You haven't reached the peak of the 12th layer of the aura refining realm, so it's still not the time to look for a technique, right?" "Hee, disciple just wants to look up some ancient books." "Senior, please show me the way," Xiaohua said with a smile. "And follow I." That cultivator turned around and said. Chapter 1574. Xiaohua followed the foundation-building cultivator into the inner hall. After walking for the time it took to smoke a cigarette, several divine senses swept past Xiaohua's body, but they didn't stop. After turning into a corridor, there was a small projector wall. On the projector wall, there was a huge picture. On the picture was an antique pavilion. The door of the pavilion was half closed, and there was a plaque on the door with the words, "Technique Imparting Pavilion," written on it. Seeing the cultivator stop in front of the picture, Xiaohua was a bit dazed. He secretly said, "Could it be, this is the Technique Transmission Pavilion?" Sure enough, he heard the cultivator point his hand and say, "Take out your identity tablet and throw it into the picture." "Yes, disciple understands," Xiaohua answered and took out the tablet. After hesitating for a moment, he threw the tablet into the picture. As soon as the tablet touched the picture on the screen wall, the picture emitted a trace of lightning that struck the tablet. Strangely enough, a trace of lightning also flashed from the tablet and collided with the lightning that struck it. The two streaks of lightning disappeared at the same time, and the tablet sank into the picture. After a moment, the whole picture emitted a tricolored brilliance. The brilliance flashed, and the picture disappeared. What appeared in front of Xiaohua was a courtyard door that was the same size as the picture. Through the courtyard door, not far ahead, there was a pavilion that was exactly the same as the one in the picture, just now standing in the center of the courtyard. Just as Xiaohua was staring, a middle-stage foundation building cultivator came out from the courtyard door, holding Xiaohua's tablet in his hand. He looked at Xiaohua and asked, "Your Xiaohua disciple is?" Xiaohua didn't dare to be negligent. "Why did you come to the Technique Transmission Pavilion?" Xiaohua didn't answer. He turned around and said to the foundation building cultivator who brought him here, "Thank you for leading the way, senior." You're welcome." The cultivator laughed, flicked his big sleeve, and turned around to leave. When the cultivator walked far away, Xiaohua clapped his hand and took out the sect master's tablet, handing it over. "Disciple has something to do in the Technique Transmission Pavilion. Senior, please check the tablet." "Oh." The foundation building cultivator stared blankly at first, but when he saw the sect master command tablet, he was slightly startled. After repeatedly examining it, he handed it back to Xiaohua along with the identity tablet. He said, "According to the sect master command tablet, you can look it up in the Technique Inheritance Pavilion, but you can't take it out." "Yes, disciple understands." Xiaohua received the sect master token and replied,
"And come in."
That cultivator turned around and entered the courtyard. Xiaohua followed him in. When Xiaohua's figure turned around the courtyard door, a tricolored brilliance flashed, and that picture appeared again. The entire screen wall returned to its previous appearance. The real Inheritance Technique Pavilion was different from the picture. It was surrounded by Foundation Establishment disciples. The Foundation Establishment cultivator didn't lead Xiaohua to the Inheritance Technique Pavilion. Instead, he led him to a small house next to the Inheritance Technique Pavilion. Reporting to Martial Uncle, there's an aura refining disciple with the sect master's order who wants to come to the Technique Imparting Pavilion to look at the ancient records. The Foundation Establishment cultivator walked to the entrance of the room and reported respectfully. A very valiant divine sense was emitted from the small house. It circled around Xiaohua's body a few times, and a lazy voice sounded. "Has the sect master's order been examined?" Reporting to Martial Uncle, "It has been examined. It was indeed issued by the sect master." "And then let him in." "It's just that this disciple's sect master's order is somewhat special. It seems the sect master has decreed that he can enter the Technique Inheritance Pavilions of the 8 Great Lightning Palaces." That cultivator said cautiously, "Oh, this disciple is called Xiaohua, right?" "Yes, Martial Uncle understands. He's indeed Xiaohua."
"And let him in."
The sect master has long passed down a decree. Cultivation methods and magic arts that are a level higher than his can all be looked at. It's just that he can't take it out of the Technique Inheritance Pavilion. A trace of extraordinary splendor flashed through that cultivator's eyes. He cupped his hands and said, "Yes, disciple understands." Soon after, he said in a low voice, "Come with this old man." Xiaohua nodded, then rushed into the small house and bowed. "Thank you, senior." It was quiet inside the small house, as if no one had heard anything. Seeing that there was no movement, Xiaohua also turned around and followed that cultivator into the pavilion. They walked all the way to the door. Then the cultivator pointed with his hand and said, "Take your identity tablet and go in yourself." Then he turned around and walked to a place not far from the pavilion. There was a praying mat placed on the ground there. He sat down cross-legged and no longer paid attention to Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua didn't dare to be negligent. He respectfully bowed and thanked the cultivators back. Only then did he take out his identity tablet and step into the pavilion. The pavilion's door wasn't high. It was carved out of bronze-colored wood. It didn't look too different from the study of a mortal family. Xiao Hua raised his eyes and looked. He very easily passed through that door. There was actually no restriction at all. Strange. Xiao Hua was greatly surprised. The restriction outside is so peculiar. Inside, not waiting for him to give birth to this thought, suddenly, from inside the pavilion, a large clump of lightning net flashing with lightning whistled and rushed towards Xiao Hua. Xiao Hua didn't even see the situation inside the pavilion clearly before he was wrapped in the lightning net. Motherfucker, Xiao Hua's back instantly broke out in cold sweat. Fortunately, he also firmly believed that this lightning net would not harm him in any way. Although his transcendence energy was attracted by the lightning net and seemed to want to leave his body, he still forcibly suppressed it. Sure enough, just when he wasn't affected by the lightning net, the identity tablet in his hand emitted extremely faint lightning. It was different from when he entered the painting just now. Although the lightning was extremely small and faint, once it came into contact with the lightning net was like an illusion. It only flashed for a moment and then disappeared. After the lightning net disappeared, Xiao Hua finally saw everything inside the pavilion clearly. However, Xiao Hua's expression suddenly became dumbfounded. This pavilion wasn't large. It was only several tens of feet long. On the pavilion's surrounding walls, there were paintings that were more than half the height of a person hanging. The center of the pavilion wasn't like what Xiao Hua imagined. There were bookshelves, and there were also no jade slips placed on top of the bookshelves. There were only fist-sized balls of light. Counting them carefully, there were as many as 9 balls of light. Each ball of light was rotating in a fixed place, and the 9 balls of light seemed to form a very mysterious magic formation. Xiao Hua somewhat scratched his head. The cultivation method, where is it? Even though Xiao Hua walked through the entire pavilion and looked at the seemingly existing second floor, there was no ladder that could lead to it. Just when Xiao Hua turned around and wanted to go out and ask, one of the paintings on the wall beside Xiao Hua suddenly emitted a faint lightning. That lightning swayed and cast on the floor of the pavilion. From that painting, a cultivator whose cultivation couldn't be seen walked out. Xiao Hua was startled. He quickly retreated a few steps and respectfully looked at the cultivator. He saw that the cultivator's figure was originally nothingness, but then it gradually solidified. When the light and shadow turned into a real person, the lightning that was projected on the ground immediately returned to the painting.
And?
That cultivator slightly tilted his head and glanced at Xiao Hua. He walked to the side of a ball of light and used his hand to point. That ball of light suddenly enlarged. The cultivator patted his hand and took out a jade slip. Then he threw it into the ball of light. Then, with another point, that ball of light shrank and returned to its original position. Martial ancestor, Xiao Hua saw that the cultivator was about to leave and quickly called out, "Disciple Xiao Hua wants to ask for guidance from martial ancestor." "Oh, what do you want?" The cultivator turned his head and asked very indifferently. "This is the first time disciple has come here to look up the ancient records. I don't know how to look it up. Martial ancestor, please instruct me." Xiao Hua respectfully asked, "And Zhang and the others didn't explain to you how to use it?" The cultivator frowned and said very unhappily, "This disciple didn't ask." Xiao Hua saw that the cultivator was unhappy and quickly smiled apologetically. "I'm afraid martial uncle and the others thought disciple knew? You're thinking for others." That cultivator snorted from his nose and pointed with his hand. "Within these few halos is the place where my technique imparting pavilion stores ancient records. You only need to throw your identity tablet into it, and the halos will naturally lead you in." After saying that, the cultivator didn't stay and left the technique imparting pavilion. "Oh, so it's like that." Xiao Hua cupped his hands and sent that cultivator off. Looking at the 9 balls of light around him, He didn't know which one was which. Originally, he wanted to go out and ask, but on second thought there were only 9. Wouldn't it be fine to try them one by one? Thinking this, Xiaohua took out his identity tablet and tried to throw it into the ball of light next to him. Unexpectedly, after the identity tablet was thrown in, that ball of light spun rapidly and slowly emitted a layer of orange-red brilliance. The brilliance didn't last long, and Xiaohua's identity tablet was thrown out again. I'm afraid I won't be able to do good. Xiaohua understood that his identity tablet should be like what that senior he'd never met said. It could only enter the halos of foundation building and aura refining cultivation techniques. Sure enough, after Xiaohua walked towards the door and tried to throw his identity tablet in, that ball of light spun and emitted an emerald green brilliance. Soon after, from that ball of light, a flight of stairs floated in the air and extended to Xiaohua's feet. Wonderful! Xiaohua almost clapped his hands. Soon after, he stepped onto the stairs. Sure enough, the stairs automatically shrank and Xiaohua's figure shrunk even more. As the stairs unexpectedly flew into the ball of light and disappeared, the entire pavilion immediately returned to its previous tranquility. Not long after, the ball of light that Xiaohua entered suddenly started to spin again. Soon after, it expanded, and another flight of stairs extended from the ball of light. A middle-stage foundation building cultivator walked down the stairs with a jade slip in his hand. As the stairs moved, a small inch-long person gradually grew bigger. By the time it landed on the ground, it already had the appearance of an ordinary person. Immediately after, that flight of stairs didn't shrink, and Xiaohua walked out from the ball of light. He walked to the cultivator's side and bowed with a smile. "Martial uncle, thank you for your guidance." That cultivator didn't say much and clapped his hands. He took out an identity tablet and threw it towards the wall. It was a blank picture scroll. Just like before, the picture scroll projected a brilliance of lightning. That cultivator took a step forward, and the brilliance suddenly disappeared. The cultivator flew into the picture scroll and disappeared. Looking at the picture scroll again, it actually gradually revealed a splash ink painting. The mountain in the painting looked very majestic. Chapter 1575. Oh, so that's how it is. Xiaohua nodded. He looked around and saw that only 30% of the paintings on the wall had different pictures. Presumably, they were all occupied by people. And this painting has its own space. Inside it is a quiet room. Those who take the cultivation methods of the technique imparting pavilion are not allowed to take them out of the pavilion, so they have to comprehend them in this quiet room. Xiaohua suddenly understood. He then looked at the ball of light that just came out, and a trace of a bitter smile appeared on his face. Although the ball of light looks small from the outside, the space inside is extremely large. There are many jade slips. The jade slips are divided into talisman crafting, alchemy, cultivation methods, incantations, and so on. They are all placed in different areas. At the same time, there are several foundation establishment disciples in the space also looking through ancient books. Xiaohua is currently at the 11th layer of qi refining, so he doesn't dare to reveal too much of his perception. Seeing that the inside is full of jade slips, he just casually looked through them and didn't use his perception to probe. However, looking at the few jade slips in the cultivation method area, and then looking at the talisman crafting, alchemy, incantations, and so on, Xiaohua understood. Even in the Imperial Thunder sect, cultivation methods are extremely scarce. Standing in the pavilion, Xiaohua pondered for a moment, then threw the token into the ball of light next to the foundation establishment light ball. Sure enough, this ball of light also released a flight of stairs. Needless to say, this should be the qi refining light ball. Xiaohua stepped onto the flight of stairs and entered the ball of light. After the time it takes to eat a meal, he came out of the ball of light. At this time, Xiaohua held 2 small booklets in his hands and a trace of a smile on his face. Soon after, Xiaohua, like the foundation establishment cultivator, also threw the token into a blank scroll and entered the quiet room. For 10 days in a row, Xiao Hua stayed in the technique imparting pavilion. He constantly took out cultivation methods from the balls of light, went to the quiet room to study them, and then changed to take out other cultivation methods. Alas, these cultivation methods, only 50% of them are complete. The rest are mostly incomplete cultivation methods collected from other places in the country of Xi. And within these 50% cultivation methods, I feel that half of them are similar, only adjusted according to different constitutions. If I really cultivate it, it might not be as fast as I's heavenly laws embodiment technique. After Xiao Hua placed a cultivation technique back into the ball of light, he thought to himself, "It's true that I can comprehend it in the quiet room, but the spiritual qi of heaven and earth inside is insufficient, so it's very difficult to make any breakthroughs. Right now, I don't need to look at cultivation methods anymore. I should look at spells and the like first. That's the right thing to do." After watching for several more days, Xiao Hua finally came out from the Technique Inheritance Pavilion. Seeing that the foundation-building disciples on duty all around paid no attention to him, he could only cup his hands and walk away. After returning to the Eastern Ridge Herb Garden, Xiao Hua opened the magic array and checked his cave and alchemy room. There were no traces of anything. Then he relaxed and went into seclusion to cultivate. Unknowingly, another 10 days had passed. At noon, Xiao Hua had just placed an absorption pill into his mouth. That trace of medicinal power had just been refined and transformed into true qi. Xiao Hua only felt that the true qi within his meridians had begun to slightly fluctuate. Soon after, as if it was boiling, the true qi began to rapidly circulate along the meridians within his body. Wonderful! Xiao Hua understood that he was about to break through the barrier of the 11th layer of the qi refining realm. Thus, he focused his mind and completely refined the medicinal power of the absorption pill. Then, he urged his true qi to break through the barrier. Just like other qi refining cultivators, breaking through the barrier was far from difficult for Xiao Hua. He only felt his body lighten as his true qi broke through the new meridians. It was like mercury flowing down the ground, incomparably smooth. But right at this moment, a strange change occurred. The magic power around Xiao Hua's body suddenly began to violently tremble, emitting a strange fluctuation. That fluctuation became increasingly intense. This fluctuation was like a kind of flame, instantly igniting all the true qi within his meridians. That true qi was formed from heart fire. Heart fire flowed along the meridians without stop, very similar to when Xiao Hua refined the fire essence flame crystal. However, every time this heart fire moved, Xiao Hua's heart would dry up by a bit. In his heart, there was a kind of longing for a sweet rain. At the same time, every time the heart fire moved, there was a tendency for it to break free from the shackles of the meridians. However, this heart fire was firmly blocked by the meridians. This is the opportunity to stimulate divine sense. It's just as eldest senior brother said. But why did this heart fire ignite on its own? I haven't activated the secret technique yet, have I? Xiao Hua's spirit was blessed, and there was a very familiar feeling. Then, with a wave of his hand, he took out the rainbow epiphyllum that had been growing for who knows how long. In his heart, he silently chanted the secret technique to stimulate divine sense. With a wave of his hand, heart fire came out from Xiao Hua's 5 fingers. The thick rainbow epiphyllum and the several zhang-long rainbow were roasted by this heart fire, immediately turning into a large ball of 7-colored liquid. It slightly rotated in Xiao Hua's hand, looking very gorgeous. Isn't it a bit big? Xiao Hua was somewhat dumbfounded. Of course, other people's rainbow epiphyllum were at most 100 years old. After melting, it was only the size of a soybean. How could it compare to his big one? I don't care. Xiao Hua was the most greedy. He knew that this rainbow epiphyllum was very old, and he was unwilling to use only a little. Then, he clenched his teeth and waved his hand. That large ball of 7-colored liquid flew toward Xiao Hua's head. Speaking of which, it was also strange. The 7-colored liquid that was originally larger than Xiao Hua's head under the Imperial Thundersect's secret technique, actually gradually shrank. By the time it touched Xiao Hua's forehead, it had already been compressed to the size of a thumb. It directly shot into the long-disappeared swastika character on Xiao Hua's forehead. With a tongue sound, the seven-colored liquid entering Xiao Hua's body was like adding oil to the fire. The heart fire in Xiao Hua's meridians suddenly flourished, enveloping Xiao Hua's entire meridians within the heart fire. Although Xiao Hua had the experience of refining the fire essence flame crystal, he was still somewhat bewildered. He didn't dare to be negligent and activated the secret technique, sending the seven-colored liquid to his Naiwen palace. However, a strange thing happened. The seven-colored liquid didn't condense into a small like the secret technique said. Instead, it condensed into a rather large sphere. In his perception, it was even larger than Xiao Hua's head. According to the guidance of the secret technique, Xiao Hua should have urged this seven-colored sphere to slowly rotate, absorbing the heart fire in his meridians into this sphere. He should have used the heart fire to forge this seven-colored sphere, giving birth to the first strand of divine sense. However, Xiao Hua's seven-colored sphere was truly too large. The secret technique simply couldn't move it. At this time, Xiao Hua's arrow was already knocked on the bow. He had no choice but to brace himself and activate the secret technique, attracting the heart fire to forge the sphere. Because the sphere didn't rotate, the heart fire couldn't be easily attracted over. The heart fire that Xiao Hua spent a Herculean effort to get was simply a cup of water on a burning cart of firewood. It was of no use at all. It couldn't even refine a single bit of the seven-colored sphere. This is bad. I'm too greedy. Xiao Hua was somewhat regretful. It would have been better to use that jade Kirin fruit. However, at this time, the Naiwen Palace was occupied by that enormous seven-colored sphere. How could it still contain the jade Qilin fruit? Besides, who knew if there would be a problem if the rainbow epiphyllum and the jade Qilin fruit both melted at the same time? What should I do? Xiao Hua was practically sweating like rain. Suddenly, on Xiao Hua's forehead, where the seven-colored liquid had entered, the swastika character flashed out due to the effect of the rainbow epiphyllum. It reflected the seven-colored liquid and emitted a faint Buddhist light. That's right, don't I also know the exquisite leaf sutra? Xiao Hua suddenly thought. It seemed that this situation had an extremely similar feeling to the first step of refining relics in the exquisite leaf sutra. Thus, Xiao Hua put aside the Imperial Thundersect's secret technique that stimulated divine sense and recalled the contents of the exquisite leaf sutra. Then, according to the records in the Heart Sutra, he began to temper himself. As Xiao Hua tempered the seven-colored liquid in the Naiwen Palace, the swastika character on his forehead became more and more obvious, and the Buddhist light also became more and more intense. However, this Buddhist light didn't shoot far and only enveloped Xiao Hua. In his meridians, the raging heart fire didn't extinguish because Xiao Hua gave up on the secret technique, nor did it go out of control because the seven-colored liquid didn't absorb it. Instead, it slowly circulated gently in Xiao Hua's meridians like true qi. At the same time, the reverse light in the space stopped rotating, and a tranquil and serene atmosphere filled the entire space. Little Silver and Little Yellow both fell into a deep sleep. At this time, the strange starlight also shot in and was refined one by the heart fire. After who knew how much time had passed, following the tempering of the exquisite leaf sutra, the seven-colored sphere gradually changed shape. A Buddha with one hand pointing to the sky and the other pointing to the ground with an expression of supreme benevolence gradually revealed a vague outline. It was just that this outline was very rough, and most of it was nothingness. So much so that after a slight flash, it only left behind a faint shadow. Of course, the strangest thing was that the Naiwen Palace, where the Buddha's relic was located, suddenly bulged out, as if the Buddha had an enormous belly. The Buddha's relic was also slowly rotating along with the spinning swastika character on Xiao Hua's forehead. The Buddha's relic's empty, illusory face seemed to overlook everything in the world as it rotated. AI, following Xiao Hua's sigh, his Buddha's relic stopped rotating and faced the same direction as Xiao Hua. The swastika character on Xiao Hua's forehead also flashed a few times, and the entire Buddha's light converged, then disappeared without a trace. Although Xiao Hua sighed, he didn't open his eyes. At this time, his perception— oh, that's not right. According to the exquisite Leaf Sutra, his perception should be Buddhist awareness. This Buddhist awareness was born from the Buddha's relic and was who knew how many times more tyrannical than before. Everything within several hundred feet of him was within his Buddhist awareness. Damn it. This shouldn't be divine sense, right? After seeing Buddhist awareness, Xiao Hua wasn't happy at all. Instead, he was a little worried. He was a disciple of the Imperial Thunder sect, not a disciple of some Buddhist sect. Without divine sense, how was he going to explain this to his master and grandmaster? How was he going to cultivate after he reached foundation establishment? He clearly didn't have divine sense, so how is he going to control magic artifacts and even magic treasures in the future? Greed is like a snake trying to swallow an elephant. Xiao Hua warned himself again. Chapter 1576. Right, didn't Master give me a jade qilin fruit? Should I give it a try? Xiao Hua thought, and took out the jade qilin fruit. But looking at the ugly jade qilin fruit, Xiao Hua hesitated. What if this jade qilin fruit conflicts with the Buddha's sarira? Will there be another problem? Io, my true qi. Xiao Hua noticed the heart fire in his meridians at this time. Because according to the secret method of the Imperial Thunder sect, the heart fire should be completely absorbed by the rainbow epiphyllum and new true qi would be produced. Now that Xiao Hua didn't use the heart fire, the new true qi naturally wouldn't be produced. Damn it! Xiao Hua almost jumped. He wanted to stop and send a sound-transmitting talisman to ask eldest senior brother Xiangyang or master, but he had no way to explain the rainbow epiphyllum and also no way to explain the Buddha's sarira. Will the heart fire extinguish on its own? It seems, according to eldest senior brother's teachings, without the secret method of the Imperial Thunder sect, true qi and magic power would only boil for a while, then calm down. Just as Xiao Hua thought about it, he immediately denied it. If it could be extinguished, it would have been extinguished long ago. He had tempered the Buddha's sarira for so long, but it didn't extinguish. How could it be extinguished now? Maybe I should try the secret method of the Imperial Thunder sect? And try the jade qilin fruit? Xiao Hua hesitated for the time it takes to burn a stick of incense, then made up his mind. He once again activated the secret method, using the heart fire to melt the jade qilin fruit. Sure enough, after the jade qilin fruit melted, it became a tricolored sphere the size of a soybean. But where should he put this tricolored liquid? When Xiao Hua tried to send the liquid into his Naiwan palace to no avail, he faced a new problem. Fortunately, he only hesitated for a moment before he found an excellent position between the eyebrows of the Buddha's sarira, which was also where the Naiwan palace was located. After placing the tricolored liquid of the jade qilin fruit, Xiao Hua still closed his eyes and activated the secret method to rotate the tricolored liquid. Sure enough, following the rotation of the tricolored liquid, the heart fire in his meridians was all sucked around the tricolored liquid. The heart fire surrounded the liquid, fiercely burning it. After an unknown period of time, the three-colored liquid was burned dry with a boom, and the heart flame was extinguished at the same time. Between the Buddha sarira's eyebrows, a faintly discernible, tiny, that couldn't be any smaller suddenly appeared, and a pure divine thought emerged spontaneously. Green blood for elixir core? God's guidance? For some reason, these two names appeared in Xiao Hua's mind. At the same time, he recalled two extremely familiar cultivation technique chants. This time, Xiao Hua wasn't surprised, nor did he open his eyes. Instead, he calmed his heart and recalled the chant of God's guidance in his mind over and over again, hoping to recall something else. Unfortunately, the chant flowed through his mind like a clear stream of water, pure and without any other impurities. After waiting for a long time, Xiao Hua slowly opened his eyes. His eyes were somewhat perplexed as he pondered. That nameless chant is clearly the same as the exquisite leaf scripture, but it is a bit superficial. I'm afraid it was also lost by that Buddhist sect. And this God's guidance is actually a cultivation technique with 9 levels. It seems it is somewhat related to my Imperial Thunder sect's secret technique. If I were to compare the secret technique with the nameless chant, then this God's guidance would be the exquisite leaf scripture. Moreover, when I was trying to cultivate God's guidance, I faintly felt a kind of reaction from the location of the Niwen Palace. It's just that this reaction is based on the feeling of the cultivation technique, so it can't be taken seriously. But the problem is every human must have a Niwen Palace. Where does a cultivator's divine thought come from if they don't have a Niwen Palace? Since I can't feel the Niwen Palace, then the Niwen Palace must have an abnormality. And this abnormality isn't ordinary, it's serious. Even that Empress, with her incredible divine ability, couldn't sense it, so how can I deal with it now? After a few thoughts, Xiaohua dismissed the idea of using God's guidance to forcefully sense the Niwen Palace. He already knew that in this cultivation world, there were countless people with remarkable abilities. His own background was unknown, so he was afraid that he had some background. Of course, if he didn't have absolute confidence, he would rather suffer some grievances than alert the enemy and put himself in a disadvantageous situation in advance. The newly born divine thought was extremely weak. It was far inferior to Xiaohua's previous perception, not to mention the Buddhist sense that had undergone a metamorphosis. Xiaohua tried to control his divine thought to familiarize himself with his new divine thought. He also used the records of the exquisite leaf scripture to control his Buddhist sense. Comparing the two, Xiaohua was somewhat confused. These two things seemed to have the same use, but he felt that there were some differences in the nature of the two. It was like looking at a mountain. Divine thought, you could see the mountain, but you could also see mountains after mountains. On the other hand, Buddhist sense could see the mountain, but it could also see the mountain within the mountain. I'm afraid I'll have to ask Master about this kind of profound matter. But immediately after, Xiaohua thought to himself, since Qin Mingwei and the others have been investigating this matter for several decades, Master, I'm afraid he might not know. At this moment, the command medallion in Xiaohua's bosom suddenly changed. Xiaohua impatiently took out the command medallion, flew into the air, and opened the formation. He saw that outside the formation, Zhenming was also impatient. As soon as he saw Xiaohua, he berated, Xiaohua, since you know that today is the day to turn in the flame dawn grass, why didn't you open the formation? Could it be that you've already forgotten the lesson from 2 years ago?
What?
Xiaohua was stunned. He didn't expect that he had only gone into seclusion once to break through the barrier of the 12th layer of the refinement realm and refine the Buddha's Saraira. All of a sudden, he had spent a year's time. Xiaohua rolled his eyes and smiled apologetically. Senior Martial Brother Zhen, Disciple returned late yesterday. This morning, Disciple went to the mountain to pick the flame dawn grass. I was afraid of delaying Senior Martial Brother's matter, so, no need to say any more. Quickly bring the flame dawn grass. Zhenming stretched out his hand and shouted, Oh, Senior Martial Brother, please wait a moment. Disciple still has some left. I'll go pick it right away. Xiaohua cupped his hands and quickly flew back. Fortunately, Zhenming only frowned slightly and didn't follow him. He stood in the air and looked around in boredom. Not long after, Xiaohua turned back and handed over the storage pouch. Zhenming opened it and looked, then handed an empty storage pouch to Xiaohua and asked, What about the other spirit herbs? Did they continue to grow? Xiaohua knew that he wouldn't come in, so he smiled and said, Most of them can't be grown, but some have just sprouted. I knew it was impossible. Zhenming didn't say anything else and flew back to the Thunder Hall. Looking at Zhenming's departing figure, Xiaohua faintly smiled. He took out the command medallion and closed the Eastern Ridges formation. Then, he circulated his magic power and used the lightning escape technique to rush towards the myriad Thunder Valley. Far away in the Xuanyan mountain of the Xuanyan school, there was a towering mountain peak. This mountain peak was different from the other mountains around it. There was no forest or grass on the mountain, only a layer of ice and craggy rocks. At the bottom of the mountain, there was a huge cave. From the top of the cave, there were many ice pillars as thick as a human arm hanging down, blocking the cave. At this time, in front of the cave, Jieqiong Fairy was leading several Foundation Establishment stage disciples to land on the smooth ground. Open the seal. Jieqiong Fairy's face had a trace of joy, but also more confusion as she whispered. Yes, disciple understands. Two older cultivators took 2 steps forward. Each of them held a crystal-clear jade disc in their hands. When they circulated their magic power, the jade disc emitted a sky-blue brilliance. Then, from the jade disc, half of an ice sparrow flew out. Each of them flapped a wing, which looked very strange. The 2 halves of the ice sparrow merged together in midair, forming a complete ice sparrow. Then, the 2 disciples looked at each other, circulated their magic power at the same time, pointed their hands, and shouted, "Go!" The ice sparrow slammed into the icicles in front of the cave. The entire cave flashed with the same sky-blue brilliance and was annihilated. Instantly, the numerous icicles disappeared, revealing the dark cave entrance. Jieqiong Fairy didn't seem to hesitate. She flew into the cave entrance and flew down the mountain. The cave was winding and extremely deep. After flying for the time it took for an incense stick to burn, they arrived at a place that looked like an ice palace. This was also a rather large space. Everything inside was carved out of ice. There were birds and beasts, famous flowers and strange plants, and there were even some things of the mortal world that were sparkling and translucent. Jieqiong Fairy flew to the center of the ice palace. In front of an exquisite house, she patted her hand and took out a token. She threw it at the door of the house. When the token touched the cold door, it immediately flashed a brilliance and sank into the door. In a moment, the whole house strangely melted, revealing a round hole on the ground. Jieqiong Fairy was not in a hurry to enter the cave. Instead, she released her divine sense and looked around before flying into the cave. After the cave, there was another deep cave that was bitingly cold. The 4 walls of this deep cave were inlaid with a lot of moonstones. But in the cold, the moonstones' brilliance was dim, as if they couldn't go very far. When Jieqiong Fairy and a group of Foundation Establishment stage cultivators behind her entered this deep cave, they immediately looked at the 5 chi refining stage cultivators who were sitting cross-legged around the cave. Clap, clap. Jieqiong Fairy patted her hand, and the 5 cultivators opened their eyes at the same time. Their faces were full of joy as they looked at Jieqiong Fairy. You all wait here. This time's cultivation ends here. Yes, disciple understands. We will follow martial ancestors' order. The 5 cultivators stood up at the same time. One of them was Xiao Mao. Go! Each of you take one and follow me back to Golden Goose Mountain. Jieqiong Fairy looked around and scolded. Yes, disciple understands. 5 of the Foundation Establishment stage cultivators stepped forward, and each of them grabbed a disciple and followed Jieqiong Fairy out of the deep cave, not knowing how far away from Xuanyan Mountain. In a mountain forest surrounded by white clouds, countless birds and beasts were leisurely flying.
Dang.
A bell rang. Not only did it scare away the birds and beasts, but it also shook the clouds away. Gradually, in the depths of the mountain forest, at the foot of the mountain, in front of a magnificent palace, a white-clothed cultivator was quickly entering the palace. This person was the Foundation Establishment stage.
Li Zongbao.
Chapter 1577. Li Zongbao was still as graceful as ever. He didn't appear arrogant or domineering just because he had reached the Foundation Establishment stage at such a young age. Even when the young disciples who were at the 7th or 8th level of chi refining came out of the palace and respectfully saluted him, he only smiled and nodded. This kind of humility was like the warmth of the spring breeze, warming people's hearts. Li Zongbao entered the palace and saw that it was empty. In the middle of the palace, There was an incense burner that was as tall as two people. Incense was floating from the top. A skinny cultivator with pure white hair was sitting cross-legged in front of the incense burner. He seemed to be meditating with his head lowered. This cultivator was Li Zongbao's master, Heng Zhao. Li Zongbao didn't dare to make a sound. He took 2 light steps and stood inside the palace with his hands behind his back. After a while, a slightly old voice came from the incense burner. Zongbao, you have reached the foundation establishment stage for several years. Have you stabilized your realm? In front of the incense burner, Heng Zhao, who had his back facing Li Zongbao, had turned around. His pair of bright eyes stared at Li Zongbao and asked kindly. Hearing this, Li Zongbao took a few steps forward and came in front of Heng Heng. He bowed and said with a smile, Good. Master knows that this disciple's realm has already stabilized in the 2nd year. In these few years, I have been steadily improving, and there has been no stagnation. Well, that's good. The foundation establishment stage is just a small beginning for you. The core formation stage is your real test. The foundation establishment stage is not like the qi refining stage. All the details must be cultivated. Do not be careless. Disciple understands. Thank you, Master, for your teachings. Li Zongbao said respectfully. Heng Zhao smiled again. A few years ago in the country of Xi, although you revealed the soul accumulation talisman a little early and your qi refining was not complete, I have asked you to slow down your cultivation for the past few years. I presume you have more or less made up for your previous mistakes. Yes, Master. Good. In the 100-Zhang Peak of the Kingdom of Xi, you killed a devil from the devil realm, Heng Ming said, while clapping his hands. But Li Zongbao frowned and said carefully, Master, that blood shadow devil was not killed by me. Zongbao. Heng Ju shook his head slightly. I know you're magnanimous and disdain to steal credit from others. But that little rogue cultivator is only at the 2nd level of qi refining. If you hadn't restrained the demon's blood shadow, how could he have destroyed it? At the end of the day, he was just taking advantage of the magic tool. He was lucky that you didn't snatch it from him. What credit can he claim? Li Zongbao blinked and remained silent. What's more, you represented the Lian Kingdom and the Utopia faction at the 100 Feet Peak. You killed the blood shadow of the Devil Realm, and the Utopia faction deserved the credit. After you came back to report to me, I reported this matter to the sect leader. This is a great contribution of the Utopia faction after the battle in the Imperial Demon Valley. The sect leader has already reported this matter to the Celestial Alliance. But I don't know why the Celestial Alliance hasn't rewarded us yet. Looking at his master's white hair and the ardent hope on his face, Li Zongbao sighed in his heart and nodded. This disciple understands. What Master said is true. Haha, that's right. This is related to the reputation of the Utopia faction. How can it be taken lightly? Although Heng Ming said this, he still shook his head. He glanced outside the hall and said, During the trip to the country of Xi, you investigated the matter of Mingyang. Your martial uncle Cho Hui is very grateful and has praised you in front of me several times. That's nothing. Mingyang joined the Utopia faction with great difficulty. He just made some progress in his cultivation and then died. I'm afraid Uncle Cho is very sad, right? It's not sad at all. Heng Ming sighed. He just wanted to help him on the road of cultivation because of his bloodline. Since he couldn't do it, he naturally had to give up. Now that you've found out the cause of this matter, your Uncle Master won't be worried about you anymore. That's why he's grateful to you. In fact, when he led Mingyang into the Utopia faction, I had advised him against it. Mortals have their pleasures and cultivation families have their means. Our cultivation faction is very different from theirs. If we lead a disciple with an unstable foundation into the cultivation faction, it's tantamount to pulling a seedling to help it grow. It's not good for Mingyang and your Uncle Cho Hui. Hearing this, Li Zongbao's mouth twitched slightly. There was a trace of helplessness in his eyes. He whispered, Actually, this disciple understands Uncle Cho Hui's. Heng Ming snorted coldly. You understand, but you can't do what he did. Now he's caught in his own trap. He has worries in his heart, and his cultivation hasn't improved for a long time. Previously, his cultivation was only slightly lower than mine.
But now?
He's only at the initial stage of the gold core realm. Looking at the situation, although the family's matter has come to an end, he's now cut off his worries and his cultivation should be able to improve. But the most suitable time has passed. I'm afraid he won't be able to conceive a baby in this life. A trace of despair appeared in Li Zhongbao's eyes again. He seemed to be in pain, but this pain was quickly annihilated. How could Heng Ming see it? I called you here today to tell you that your Uncle Cho, Hui, just sent a message. The Taiching faction of the Meng Kingdom will host the Feather Fairy Gathering next year and sent an invitation to the Utopia faction. Your Uncle Cho, Hui, has accepted the disciple selection for the Feather Fairy Gathering. According to his idea, he wants to give you a hand and let you be the deputy leader of the team. What do you think? Hearing this, Li Zhongbao pondered for a moment and said in a low voice, I appreciate Uncle Cho Hui's kindness. But the Feather Fairy Gathering is in the Meng Kingdom. This is related to the reputation of the Utopia faction. I'm just a cultivator at the initial stage of the foundation establishment stage. How can I be the deputy leader? Uncle Cho Hui's idea is somewhat inappropriate. Heng Ming waved his hand and said with a smile, You don't have to worry about this kind of thing. Your Uncle Cho Hui won't assign you casually. The Feather Fairy Gathering is just a gathering of cultivators at the peak of the Qi refining stage. It's a chance to show off the strength of our faction and communicate with the disciples of other factions. Even if there is any victory or defeat, it's just a child's play in our eyes. Don't take it seriously. You're just a cultivator at the initial stage of the foundation establishment stage. It's just right for you to go there. Li Zhongbao understood what his master meant. He had stepped into the foundation establishment stage at a young age and was considered an outstanding cultivator among the various factions of the Lian Kingdom. If he went there as the deputy leader, he didn't need to participate in the exchange and could use his age to show off the strength of the Utopia faction. He was indeed a very good candidate. So Li Zhongbao cupped his hands and said, I'll listen to Master and Uncle Cho Hui's instructions. Okay, then you should make some preparations. Refine and familiarize yourself with your magic artifacts. The Feather Fairy Gathering will be held next year. At that time, a disciple will inform you. Heng Ming waved his hand and said, Yes, I know. Li Zhongbao nodded and then asked, I wonder if this year's Feather Fairy Gathering will still be held in the Xi Nation, the Meng Kingdom, or the Lian Kingdom? Yes, of course, Heng Ming said impatiently. When did the Heng Kingdom participate? What about the cultivation families? Will they participate? Humph. How could they be qualified to participate? Heng Ming sneered and said, The Feather Fairy Gathering has always been a matter of the cultivation families. What does it have to do with them? Yes, I understand. I'll take my leave now. Li Zhongbao didn't dare to say anything more. He bowed and was about to leave. Just then, Heng Ming suddenly asked, Zhongbao, have you made a breakthrough in your parting love treasure mirror? Li Zhongbao smiled bitterly and said in a low voice, I feel that I'm about to make a breakthrough. But there's always a barrier in front of me. I know the door, but I can't enter it. Mortal bond. Inner demon. Worry. Heng Ming said without hesitation, the parting love treasure mirror is the best cultivation method of the Taiching sect. It's the best way to cultivate to the gold core stage. At the same time, it's also the basic incantation to cut off mortal thoughts and condense a nascent soul with a pure heart. Zhongbao, you have to take care of yourself. I understand. Li Zhongbao lowered his head and replied with a slightly changed expression. After Li Zhongbao left, Heng Ming only glanced outside the hall. He then turned around and closed his eyes to adjust his breathing. As for Xiao Hua, after leaving the Eastern Mountain Herb Garden, he used the lightning escape technique. His speed was much faster than before. He flew straight to Wu Xian's cave in the 10,000 Thunder Valley. Before he landed, a divine sense swept past him. Xiao Hua was very familiar with that divine sense.
It was Wu Xian.
Xiao Hua smiled and tried to release his own divine sense. When the two divine senses met, Wu Xian's divine sense immediately retracted, as if he was afraid of damaging Xiao Hua's divine sense. Then, Wu Xian's laughter came from the cave in the distance. Ha ha ha, as expected of a disciple of the 10,000 Thunder Valley. You broke through to the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm in just a year. Your divine sense is also very authentic. Then Wu Xian and Xiangyang appeared in the distance. When they arrived, Xiangyang also smiled and said, "Congratulations, little junior brother." Xiao Hua bowed to the two and said with a smile, "This is all because of Master's teachings and eldest senior brother's supervision." Ha ha ha. Wu Xian laughed again, as if he really taught Xiao Hua. He then waved his hand and said, "Go, your master's wife has prepared a gift for you. See if it's suitable." When he heard that there was something to take, Xiao Hua immediately beamed with joy. He then followed Wu Xian and Xiangyang into the cave. Inside the cave, Zhou Minghui and Yan Qinglian had already prepared the spirit wine and spirit fruits. When they saw Xiao Hua, they naturally congratulated him. When everyone was seated, the first thing Xiao Hua smelled was the fragrance of the emerald green spirit wine in the wine cup. This fragrance was very refreshing, fragrant, and pleasant. It was many times more tempting than the wine he tasted in the young immortal's cave. Good, no wonder eldest senior brother, nagged Master. This spirit wine is really good, Xiao Hua thought, but his eyes were glued to the wine cup. Cough, cough, Wu Xian coughed and said, "Today is the happiest day in the 10,000 Thunder Valley." Since Xiao Hua entered the 10,000 Thunder Valley, he has been diligently cultivating. His cultivation has been constantly improving. Today, he has finally stepped into the 12th layer of the Qi refining realm. Although he hasn't built his foundation, his divine sense has already been stimulated. Looking at Xiao Hua's cultivation, if nothing unexpected happens, building his foundation won't be a problem. It can be said that he already has 1 foot in the foundation establishment realm. Xiangyang's face was also full of smiles. He opened his mouth, wanting to say something, but after hesitating for a moment, he closed it again. He helplessly raised his wine cup and said with a smile, "Everyone, let's toast to the happy occasion of my 10,000 Thunder Valley." "Thank you, Master." Xiao Hua was very happy. He raised his wine cup and looked at everyone. After waiting for everyone to drink the wine, he also raised his head and poured the spirit wine into his mouth. As the spirit wine entered his throat, a burning feeling emerged from his throat. That feeling rushed to his head and flowed into his body along with the spirit wine. Ah! Xiao Hua didn't expect the spirit wine to be so spicy. He couldn't help but cry out. Chapter 1578. When Xiao Hua cried out, that spicy taste rushed to his nose and mouth. His eyes couldn't help but tear up, and those tears almost burst out. Just when Xiao Hua felt that he was being rude and wanted to wipe it away, that spicy taste suddenly flipped and actually turned into an extremely cool and refreshing feeling. A wave of comfort formed in Xiao Hua's body. However, before Xiao Hua could carefully savor this comfortable feeling, that cool and refreshing feeling changed again, and the spicy taste appeared again. Ouch! 9 transformations of spirit wine. Xiao Hua suddenly thought of what Xiangyang said before. As expected, in just a few breaths, the 9 layers of spicy and refreshing feeling became stronger and stronger, tormenting Xiao Hua. However, after the spicy and refreshing feeling passed, no matter if it was his body or meridians, there was an incomparable feeling, making Xiao Hua extremely comfortable. His entire body slumped on the chair, and he didn't even want to move a finger. After a while, Xiao Hua saw that everyone was looking at him with a smile that wasn't a smile. He hurriedly straightened up and said with a smile, "Master, this spirit wine is indeed special."
Not bad, right?
"Do you want another cup?" Helplessly smile. "Don't, Master. This is good, but disciple doesn't have the fortune to enjoy it. I really can't stand the feeling of surprise in the wine." Xiao Hua hurriedly waved his hand. Disciple still likes the peaceful and fragrant spirit wine from eldest senior brother's place. Xiao Hua, I see that you're not a person who adheres to old customs. Why do you like that kind of spirit wine? Helplessly curiously said, only people like your eldest senior brother who don't want to make progress like the faint taste. Xiao Hua bitterly smiled and said, Disciple's nature is a peaceful person, and I don't like the taste of wine. On the contrary, eldest senior brother has always been thinking about Master's spirit wine. Today is to celebrate you stepping into Qi refinement level 12, so I let him drink a cup. Otherwise, let him cultivate to foundation building middle stage first. At that time, I'll let him drink all the spirit wine here. Helplessly said angrily. Master, can disciple drink a few more cups today? Xiao Hua smiled. Of course. Helplessly nodded. Xiao Hua, Master's wife's spirit wine. You can't drink more than 3 cups for the first time, or else it will be detrimental to your mind. Xiangyang wasn't angry, and only reminded Xiao Hua. Then disciple will drink 3 cups today. As Xiao Hua spoke, he picked up the wine cup in front of Yan Qinglian, filled his own cup to the brim, and brought it in front of Xiangyang. He said, however, this disciple's alcohol tolerance isn't high enough. Let eldest senior brother drink this cup on my behalf. Junior brother. Xiangyang didn't expect this at all. He quickly got up and waved his hand. This is a gift for Master. Eat it. Eldest senior brother, ever since I came to the Myriad Thunder Valley, Master has been very busy. Only eldest senior brother has been guiding me in my cultivation. I am a loose cultivator, so there are very few people guiding me in my cultivation. Today, I was able to reach the 12th layer of Qi refining, all thanks to Senior Marshall Brother's guidance. If I don't drink a toast to Senior Marshall Brother, I'll feel bad. If he felt apologetic, wouldn't there be a knot in his heart? If eldest senior brother doesn't drink this cup of wine, I won't be able to get rid of the knot in my heart. My future cultivation will be a problem. Xiangyang's face turned dark red. He looked at Xiao Yan's helpless face. He waved his hand and said, It's your junior brother's kind intentions. You should drink it. His cultivation, you've really worked hard. Yes, disciple doesn't dare to claim credit. Xiangyang's eyes were filled with tears as he received the wine cup. Xiao Hua said in a low voice, I've used this wine cup before. Eldest senior Marshall brother, please don't dislike it. Xiangyang had a smile on his face as he looked at Xiao Hua. Then, he raised his head and drank the spirit wine. Xiao Hua picked up the wine pot and walked in front of Yan Qinglian. He said with a smile, Junior brother will ask Senior Marshall sister to drink this 3rd cup. Junior Marshall sister's care for me is something that I can't express with words. Yan Qinglian stood up and received the wine cup. She didn't panic in the slightest. She seemed to know that Xiao Hua would do this. She smiled and said, It's Xiangyang's good fortune to have a junior Marshall brother like you. Although junior Marshall brother's current cultivation is still too low, his future is limitless. I can't say much about the Myriad Thunder Valley, but I and your eldest senior Marshall brother will need your care in the future. She drank the spiritual wine in one gulp. Xiao Hua smiled and said, Don't worry, Senior Marshall sister. I don't dare to promise Senior Marshall sister and eldest Senior Marshall brother, but as for Xiangjili, I promise you. Yan Qinglian naturally heard Xiangyang's arrogant words and knew who Xiangjili was. Her face immediately turned red. Zhua Minghui laughed and scolded. You child, you're really naughty. Yes, Xiangyang Qinglian, Xiao Hua was right. I've been busy with the sex affairs, and you've also worked hard on the Myriad Thunder Valley. Master will also give you a toast. Helplessly, he suddenly said, Master? Xiangyang was shocked and felt extremely uncomfortable. Helplessly, he waved his hand. 2 lines of wine flew out from the wine pot in Xiao Hua's hand and landed in the 2's wine cups. Only then did Xiangyang choke and said, Disciple is unworthy and has shamed Master. Don't talk nonsense. Just drink when I tell you to. Helplessly, he shouted and interrupted Xiangyang's words. Only then did Xiangyang feel the spirit wine pouring into his stomach and said, "Thank you, master." Beside him, Yan Qinglian's face was still red. She drank the spirit wine unhurriedly and said, "Thank you, master, for the spirit wine." Receiving Helplessly's praise, Xiangyang was very excited. Everyone talked for a while. Xiangyang gathered his courage and said in a low voice, "Actually, youngest junior Marshall Brothers' talent is outstanding. He's a genius cultivator, but he was a loose cultivator before and practiced 3 kinds of cultivation methods." "Shut up." Helplessly was unhappy and scolded. "Husband." Zhuo Minghui was also unhappy and said in a low voice, "Xiangyang is right. You have placed too much hope on Xiao Hua. I'm afraid the child will have too much burden." Xiangyang is also thinking for Xiao Hua. Helplessly, he didn't dare to glare at Zhuo Minghui and could only glare at Xiangyang. Xiao Hua also understood Xiangyang's meaning and said with a smile, "Thank you for your kindness, eldest senior Marshall brother." Disciple also knows master's thoughts. However, disciple will do his best to build his foundation. After all, this is related to disciple's future, so disciple won't be careless. Of course, if there are any mistakes, master should be able to understand. "Nonsense," Helplessly said angrily. "How can there be any mistakes? You have a concealed fire physique, which is very fierce. Building your foundation's bottleneck is nothing difficult." Okay, husband, don't talk about building your foundation anymore. Xiao Hua has just reached the early stage of the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. No matter what, there's still 4 to 5 years until he builds his foundation. During this time, let Xiangyang give him more pointers. If you have time, you should also go and take a look. With Xiangyang and your help, Xiao Hua probably won't repeat the same mistakes. "Okay," helplessly, he muttered. Zhuo Minghui was displeased. She clapped her hands again and took out a red net-shaped magic tool. She handed it to Xiao Hua and said with a smile, "Master's wife wanted to give you a meeting gift a few years ago, but who knew that there wasn't anything suitable? Today, you've entered the 12th layer of the aura refining realm and also have your own divine sense. This magic tool is just right for you." Xiao Hua was overjoyed. He stepped forward and received it. After thanking Zhuo Minghui, he picked up the magic tool and carefully examined it. He saw that this magic tool was made up of thin crimson silk threads connected together. The place where each silk thread interweaved was decorated with tiny top-grade spirit stones. On top of the silk threads, there were faint flashes of runes. When the runes slightly flashed, the top-grade spirit stones also flashed. "Master's wife, what's the name of this magic tool?" Xiao Hua looked at the magic tool. He didn't know whether he liked this magic tool or liked the fact that there were so many top-grade spirit stones on the magic tool. He was smiling so widely that he couldn't close his mouth. I'll let you know. My Imperial Thunder Sect has a famous magic tool called By Fong Roaring Sky Cover. Zhuo Minghui said with a smile.
"Ah,
Master's wife, isn't this too precious?" Xiao Hua was shocked when he heard this. "You actually want that By Fong Roaring Sky Cover?" Helplessly said unhappily. "That By Fong Roaring Sky Cover doesn't like you." Xiao Hua smiled and didn't say anything else. "You silly child, this isn't some magic tool. It's a fake that the sect's weapon refiner imitated. It can be considered a magic tool." Zhuo Minghui glared at Helplessly and said that By Fong Roaring Sky Cover is woven from the essence of leaf fire. There's a leaf fire formation within it. Leaf fire formation? Xiao Hua suddenly thought of the formation in his Eastern Ridge medicinal garden. When the By Fong Roaring Sky Cover is activated, it can absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth from its surroundings and transform it into leaf fire. If one is enveloped by the By Fong Roaring Sky Cover and doesn't have a magic tool that can restrain leaf fire, then there's absolutely no way for them to escape. This magic tool is refined from the silk of the Southern Light Fire Silkworm. Although there's a formation on the silk, it's simple and far inferior to the leaf fire formation. Moreover, although the silk of the Southern Light Fire Silkworm is precious, It can absorb the spiritual energy of heaven and earth from its surroundings after all. It can only add top-grade fire attribute spirit stones on top of this silk. Zhua Minghui explained. As for the name, when this magic tool is activated, several fire crows will be born within it. There's no harm in calling it Spirit Crow Fire Net. How about it? Haha, many thanks for the name, Master's wife. Xiao Hua very happily thanked her. However, this Spirit Crow Fire Net has a shortcoming. Zhua Minghui smiled and waved her hand. This magic tool relies entirely on top-grade fire attribute spirit stones. If one is missing, there'll be a flaw in the formation. If too many are missing, it'll be completely useless. You'll have to prepare more fire attribute spirit stones in the future. When Xiao Hua heard this, he curled his lips and said, Master's wife, you're making things difficult for me. Where can I get top-grade fire attribute spirit stones? Junior martial brother doesn't need to worry. I still have a few pieces. I'll have your senior martial sister take them for you. Xiangyang hurriedly said. Hee, it won't be too late to take them later. As she spoke, Zhua Minghui took out a jade slip and handed it to Xiao Hua, saying, This is the method to refine this magic tool. There are also some methods to refine other magic tools. Master's wife remembers that you once asked your master for this, right?
When?
Xiao Hua stared blankly. He hurriedly took it and said with a smile, Many thanks, Master's wife. Many thanks, Master. That's right. I have a question I want to ask Master. Ask away. Seeing this, Xiao Hua didn't ask any more and said with a smile. Chapter 1579. Master, when disciple was participating in the selection, I saw that the disciples of influential families who were in the 12th layer and even the 11th layer of the aura refining realm were holding their ancestral magic tools. Since they entered my Imperial Thunder Sect, did those magic tools also fall into the hands of my Imperial Thunder Sect? Ha ha ha, he laughed helplessly. You brat, how is that possible? Those magic tools were passed down from the ancestors of various cultivation families. How could they benefit my Imperial Thunder Sect? Besides, once those disciples entered my Imperial Thunder Sect, they were my Imperial Thunder Sect's disciples. How could they still use their family's magic tools? A year later, when those disciples officially joined my Imperial Thunder Sect, those magic tools were given out of Thunderclap Peak. Oh, so that's how it is. Xiao Hua was somewhat regretful. Disciple thought those magic tools all belonged to my Imperial Thunder Sect. Maybe Disciple could even get one. In your dreams, he snorted helplessly, then asked, Let's not talk about anything else. Tell me about the process of advancing to the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. It's already been more than a year. Let me listen. See if there are any deviations? Xiao Hua knew this would happen. He had already thought about it on the way here. He would only give up on the Buddha's Saraira and tell everything else in full detail. What? Your true qi was actually ignited by the heart fire? He helplessly looked at Zhou Minghui. Xiangyang also looked at Yan Qinglian in astonishment. The four of them were all foundation-building cultivators and also came from the 12th layer of the aura refining realm. They had never heard of Xiao Hua's abnormality. Maybe it's because of the body of hidden fire? Xiangyang hesitated. He helplessly thought for a long time, then nodded and said, That's the only way. Fortunately, Xiao Hua has the Jade Qilin fruit and my Imperial Thunder Sect's secret technique. Otherwise, it's really hard to say. Immediately, a smile appeared on his face. This also means that Xiao Hua is a disciple of my 10,000 Thunder Valley and can build his foundation. The other four all smiled. Seeing everyone smile, Xiao Hua's heart moved. He said, Master, disciple still has something to ask. What? He asked helplessly. That the meridians after the 12th layer of the aura refining realm, are there no more? Disciple feels that. Not waiting for Xiao Hua to finish speaking, he helplessly slapped the armrest of the chair, stood up and said angrily, Xiao Hua, what do you want me to say to you? Although your mind is flexible, You can deduce many things from one instance, and you know 100 times better than your eldest senior brother. But I can't always take the unconventional path. The 12th layer of Qi condensation is the essence of my Imperial Thunder sect, and even the essence of the various sects and clans of the Dawn Rain continent over tens of thousands of years. If there were extra meridians, then there would definitely be a 13th layer of Qi condensation, but why is there only a 12th layer? Why would there be signs of liquefaction after reaching the 12th layer of Qi refining? This means that there are only these Qi passageways. There are no other Qi passageways. The other Qi passageways are for foundation establishment, gold core, and even the nascent soul stage. Why don't you put your mind on how to build your foundation? Why do you have to think about the meridians of the Aurus core stage? Do you think you're the only smart person in the world? The more helplessly spoke, the angrier he became. He angrily said, "If you want those Qi passageways, then go back to Zhenlei Palace and take your sect master's order to the Jade Archive Hall. Let the sect master send someone to accept you as a disciple. I don't have the ability to teach you, master." Xiao Hua was greatly alarmed. He promptly bowed and said, "Disciple." Disciple was only asking. Why did I think so much? Husband, Zhuo Minghui promptly got up and pulled him back. She helplessly said, "Xiao Hua used to be a loose cultivator, so he used his own brain a lot. Now that he's asking, it's to show your prestige as a master. Otherwise, why would he have a master like you? Why don't you tell Xiao Hua properly? Why are you so angry?" "That's right, master. You always say that disciple is stupid." Xiangyang also hurriedly tried to persuade her. "Shut up, I'm not talking about you," helplessly angrily said. "If only he had half of your abilities. He's only at the 11th layer of Qi refining. What lightning evasion technique? What divine sense control technique? What divine accumulation talisman? Don't think that master doesn't know anything. What's the use of those things if you want them early? Don't you still have to wait until you reach the 12th layer of Qi refining before you can use them?" Yes, master, please calm down. Disciple knows his mistake," Xiao Hua promptly said. Helplessly swinging her sleeves, she turned around and entered the inner mansion. "Master?" Xiao Hua very anxiously shouted. "It's fine, Xiao Hua." Zhuo Minghui forced a smile and said, "Your master was also afraid that you would take a detour, so she warned you. These are all my cultivation experiences. You must listen to them and remember them in your heart. Sometimes taking risks is admittedly rewarding, but more often than not, it's all for naught. If there's a smooth path to the heavens, why don't you obediently walk on it? The opportunity to build your foundation is also fleeting. If you don't start building your foundation when there are signs of building your foundation, the chances of building your foundation in the future will be much less. Moreover, there are signs of building your foundation, which means that your meridians have reached the limit of refining true Qi. If you don't build your foundation, your magic power won't increase. Even if your meridians have the medicinal power of the clear flower pill, I'm afraid that your meridians won't be able to refine them anymore. You'll only end up with your meridians exploding. Disciple knows. Eldest senior brother has already said these things. Xiao Hua nodded. And it's good that you know. Don't think too much. Go out with your eldest senior brother first and let him guide you in your future cultivation. You can't be too smart for your own good. Zhuo Minghui said, then thought of something and said, "Is the restriction on the medicinal power of the clear flower pill good? Before you build your foundation, you still have to let your master use it again. Don't let anything go wrong." Master's wife, last time master checked it, he said that if nothing unexpected happens, the restriction can be used for 10 years. Disciple also didn't notice any abnormalities. Xiao Hua respectfully replied, "All right, you can go first." Zhuo Minghui sighed, and also entered the inner residence. Xiao Hua could only follow Xiangyang and Yan Qinglian back to their abode. Xiangyang saw that Xiao Hua was somewhat sad and didn't say anything more. He only let Xiao Hua go back and rest for a few more days. After a period of time, he'll come back to listen to the lecture. Xiao Hua came out of Myriad Thunder Valley. His heart was somewhat chaotic. After flying for a while, he found that the direction was wrong. It seemed to be heading towards Heavenly Thunder Palace. Just as he was about to turn around, he thought to himself, "Today I've angered Master. I'm afraid I'll have to apologize to him." Master has always been thinking about the Heavenly Thunder Palace's lightning evasion technique. It's just that he has some misgivings about his face and didn't ask me too much. I've always been busy cultivating. Isn't this a good opportunity? Thinking, Xiao Hua sped up and flew towards Heavenly Thunder Palace's Thunder Immortal Peak. Heavenly Thunder Palace's technique imparting pavilion was in Rumbling Thunder Hall. It was different from Shocking Thunder Palace's technique imparting pavilion. It was a whole ball of lightning. In the middle of the lightning, an 8-story pavilion was faintly visible. After Xiao Hua threw in the sect master's command token and his own identity token, a light path flickered with lightning. At the end of the path was a sky full of stars. Those jade slips and ancient books were like stars decorating the sky. As it turned out, this Heavenly Thunder Palace's technique imparting pavilion was actually built on top of an illusion array. Qi refining, foundation building, and other cultivation levels were divided into different starry skies. Each level was higher than the previous, and each level was blocked by a restriction. Xiao Hua didn't stay in the Qi refining layer for long. He directly used the sect master's command token to go to the starry skies, where the foundation building cultivation method was located. Then he very easily found the 9th level of the lightning evasion technique. However, he was a little worried. He had no problem reading the jade slips with his divine sense, but if he had to make a copy of the jade slips, he couldn't do it. Not to mention whether the copy of the jade slips could be read or not. He didn't even dare to guarantee that the copy would be complete. Without any other choice, Xiao Hua pointed at the sect master's command token. A bright yellow brilliance flew out. In a moment, a huge human figure that filled the starry skies appeared in front of Xiao Hua. Disciple Xiao Hua has something to trouble Senior with. Seeing this, Xiao Hua hurriedly bowed and said, What is a 12th level Qi refining disciple doing here?" That cultivator was obviously stunned. Xiao Hua also didn't explain much and handed over the sect master's command token. That cultivator looked at it and nodded, saying, "And, Xiao Hua, what did you call me for?" Disciple wants to make a copy of this lightning evasion technique and bring it out of the technique imparting pavilion. This is also explained in the sect master's command token, right? Xiao Hua said with a smile. "Wait a moment," that cultivator said as he grabbed a ball of starlight from the starry skies. Sweeping it with his divine sense, he nodded and said, "Yes, the sect master has instructed that you can make a copy of the lightning evasion technique. Disciple has just reached the 12th level of Qi refining, and my divine sense is newly formed. I'm afraid the copy won't be good. Senior, please help me," Xiao Hua said respectfully. That cultivator slightly wrinkled his brows and said in a low voice, "The sect master's command token doesn't allow my technique imparting pavilion to make a copy of the lightning evasion technique. Naturally, you have no right to order this old man." "So, it's like that." Xiao Hua was somewhat disappointed. Just as he was about to speak, that cultivator said again, "However, this old man can extend a hand to help you. It's just a small matter." "Many thanks, Senior." Xiao Hua was overjoyed, but that cultivator waved his hand again. "Don't worry, this old man will help you copy the lightning evasion technique, but you also have to help this old man." "No problem. If Senior has a favor, how could Disciple dare to disobey?" Xiao Hua said with a smile. "Very good." That cultivator smiled and waved his hand. The jade slip of the lightning evasion technique flew into his hand. He waved his hand again, and another jade slip flew out of nowhere. That cultivator held the technique in one hand and the jade slip in the other. His powerful divine sense locked onto the technique. Soon after, a ball of green light flew out from the jade slip of the lightning evasion technique and penetrated into the jade slip in his other hand. Immediately after, that cultivator threw the lightning evasion technique. The jade slip turned into a star and fell into the starry sky. The other jade slip also flew in front of Xiao Hua's eyes. "Keep it well," that cultivator said. 10 days later, wait for me here. This old man has something for you to do." 10 days? Xiao Hua put away the jade slip and said with a smile, "Since it's like this, disciple won't leave. Disciple will stay here and read the ancient records. It won't be too late to leave after helping senior finish his task in 10 days. "As you wish." That cultivator nodded, then turned into a shadow and disappeared. What does this senior want me to do?" Xiao Hua read the lightning evasion technique while secretly pondering. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.